The following program is an MLWRadio.com production.
Oh, you didn't know? You better call somebody. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, tonight, D-Generation X proudly brings to you the one-time podcast champion of the world, Killer Conrad Thompson, Bad Boy Bruce Prichard, Something to Wrestle with Bruce Prichard. Oh, you didn't know? You better call somebody.
Welcome to Something to Wrestle with.
Something to wrestle with.
Bruce Prichard.
Well, you know.
Hey, it's Conrad Thompson, and you're listening to Something to Wrestle with. Bruce Prichard. Bruce, what is going on? What a week we have had this week. How are you feeling, brother?
What a whizzeek! Oh man, I you know what? Even when I was doing drugs, I don't think I could get any higher than I got this week, man. It's holy cow, what a great week.
Yeah, a great week indeed. And I feel like we should remind everybody that you can keep up with the archives here at somethingtowrestle.com. If you missed it, we had a phenomenal episode last week featuring The Rock in his first 2 years in the WWE. We went from Survivor Series 1996 all the way through the end of 1998. And we had a fun little story in there that Jimmy over at SI thought was worth writing up an article, their extra mustard section.
Well, you know, that's just kind of what they do. Any kind of little tidbits, if you will, and you just got to kayfabe the whiz off of his house, if you know what I'm saying.
How awesome was that? Not only did Jimmy write the article, he posted the tweet to Twitter, kind of promoting the article, and The Rock responded, offering a comment and giving a shout out to you. And it's a pretty big deal when the most electrifying man in sports entertainment puts you over, right, Bruce?
Well, you know, yes, without a doubt, man. It's absolutely crazy. And I was getting ready to say that this is the first time you and I have actually seen each other all week. But I think through all of our different calls and text messages, I think that I could see the gigantic smile on your face and you could see the gigantic smile on my face all week long with all the just tremendous stuff.
I feel like we should tell you right now, if you just want to hear about the new Age Outlaws, skip ahead several minutes. We're going to spend about 10 minutes putting ourselves over here. But first of all, we should go ahead and put over the man himself, Road Dogg, Jesse James, Mr. Brian Armstrong, for the amazing intro this week. I know that's going to get everybody talking for sure, Bruce, but how fucking cool of that was him to do that?
Oh, you didn't know? Well, absolutely tremendous. And my thanks and heartfelt thanks go out to him. Greatly appreciate it. And I thought it was a superb job. He outdid himself.
He always does. And they outdid themselves this week on SmackDown. My Twitter machine blew up, and I'm sure yours did too, when some WWE superstars decided to dress up in Halloween costumes in honor of Halloween this past Tuesday. And a couple of members of New Day, Kofi Kingston and Big E, decided to go as Brother Love. And I guess it was Akeem the African Dream, but as Big E skipped down the ramp, Corey Graves was quick to correct everyone. That was actually the Alabama Dream.
Oh, without a doubt. You know, I walked into my house. I got home on Tuesday night, and I'm walking into my office to turn on SmackDown, and my phone goes off, and it says, wow, he looks just like you. And my first reaction is a friend of mine, Jason Smith in Boston, who sent that to me. My first reaction is, pronouns, pal. Damn it. Who the hell is he? And he says, Kofi, are you not watching SmackDown? And I turn on SmackDown in my office, and I look, and it was like I was looking in the mirror almost.
Yeah, what incredible cosplay that Kofi has done. I can only hope that he tags along with Xavier Woods to some sort of Dragon Con one day, also sporting this Brother Love gimmick. He's got a future, this Brother Love Kingston, don't you think?
Without a doubt. And again, the Alabama Dream was shucking and jiving like only he can.
Dude, it was pretty surreal. And Corey Graves made my fucking week. I was watching with my daughter after some trick or treat action. She didn't want to miss SmackDown. And when Corey referred to him as Alabama Dream, I was instantly a big deal to her. So shout out to Corey. Dreams do come true. And hey, man, let's give a little love for Houston. They put you over big in the Houston press. Our man Sean over there, who's been with us since the beginning, longtime listener, and one of your long-term friends, actually did a phenomenal article with the Houston press. We linked it on Facebook earlier this week. If you're in the Houston area, go pick it up. It's the free paper, and your action figure is on the cover. Is this leaning towards the best week ever for you, Bruce?
Well, Sean Pendergast, of course. Sean is the host of 610 The Fan here in Houston, and absolutely the biggest sports talk radio show in all of Houston. And Sean also is a tremendous author as well, and writer, reporter, and all around great guy. And he did this wonderful article. He talked to you. He talked to, of course, Dan Soder, friend of the show, Shuley, Richard Deutsch. Everybody had comments in this damn article. It was tremendous. And right now, as we speak, as we live and breathe all over Houston, is my smiling face in every bar, restaurant that you could possibly think of on the cover of the Houston Press. So if you haven't already, pick your copy up. And if you're out of Houston, just go on over to HoustonPress.com and check out an article. I thought that they did a great job, and many, many thanks go out to them. I'm just a little pissed off that they didn't use the picture of Dodger, the official dog of Something to Wrestle With.
Do you hear yourself?
I do. I'm gonna tweet out a picture of Dodger, the official dog of Something to Wrestle With, so that everybody can see him. He's with me all the time.
You say that all the time. I'm gonna tweet out a picture of the Kane mask. I'm gonna tweet out.
Hey, you know what? I'm doing it right now, Conrad.
And you never do that. So
I'm gonna do it.
Well, you can follow that tweet over at Bruce Prichard. You can follow us at Prichard Show. I am at Hey, it's Conrad. And I had a great time this past Sunday. I've got to put them over. St. Paul and the Broken Bones. Bruce, I put these guys on the map for you this week. Paul Janeway is the lead singer there, and he's here in Alabama. Who would have thought that there's all this talent in Alabama with a phenomenal band like St. Paul and the Broken Bones right out of the Birmingham area. And if you haven't heard their stuff before, you should go check it out. This was my first chance to see them live. And let me just tell you, if you're listening to this show, Paul Janeway is your guy. He is one of us. He told me, I couldn't believe this was real, Bruce. He actually went over to the WWE UK tournament earlier this year. You know, they had that special for a couple of nights to crown the UK champion over there. And Paul was such a fan. He was actually in attendance at that. So he's digging our show, and you'll dig his stuff. Check out St. Paul and the Broken Bones as well.
Well, and I also got to say, you without a doubt, if you get an opportunity to check them out, you have to check them out. You told me to check them out. I did. I went and saw the Call Me video. Off the chart, already a fan. Entertainment personified. He's James Brown. He's Michael Jackson. He's Drew Carey, George Thorogood. Everything that you love about entertainment, rock and roll, jazz, they're everything. I love them. I'm a big fan. It's
unbelievable because I had an opportunity to hang out and talk to him backstage before the show. And he's, you know, just like me and all my wrestling fans, you know, he would have fit right in with us, just his personality and his demeanor. And I mean, the whole deal. And then he gets on stage and it's like, whoa, who is this? Is that the same? Okay. It's another level. Paul Janeway, St. Paul and the Broken Bones. Check it out. You're going to love that. We also should shout out our good buddy, Ramon. He hooked up a very special listener who had some really challenging times. They're getting a free copy of WWE 2K18. If you haven't already, check that game out. These guys at 2K are advertising on our show because they know that you wrestling fans are listening to Something to Wrestle with Bruce Prichard. And Bruce, I'm sure we've got it all stirred up now since Road Dogg did the intro. We're promoting the WWE 2K game. They dressed like us on SmackDown. Do you want to address the rumor and innuendo that we're actually secretly on WWE payroll right now?
Well, you know what? I was going to wait and make the real big announcement that we had at the very end of it. The answer to that question in a word would be no.
I like it. But you know what? The answer to the question of do we have a special announcement for the Houston show? You know, Houston's had a little bit of a challenging year with the unbelievable damage they suffered with the flood. But wow, what a story. The redemption, what a great moment. The World Series champions. It's a pretty big deal. The Houston Astros, man, brought home the big gold this week. And you may actually have a little bit of good news if you're an Astros fan and a Something to Wrestle fan, right?
Well, first of all, congratulations go out to the Astros. First time in the franchise history, the Astros bring home a world championship. This city needed it. What with today, Thursday, since we're recording this on Thursday, Deshaun Watson's out for the season, and it's a good feeling. Not that Deshaun's out, but it's a good feeling that the Astros won and everything. And just out of the blue, Conrad, you and I are talking, we're saying, wouldn't it be great if maybe we don't do guests, but we like to do special guests from time to time at our live shows. And wouldn't it be great if we had someone from the organization, a starter, with the Houston Astros, join us on stage in Houston on November 19th at the House of Blues? Wouldn't that be cool?
That would be cool. And I feel like you're about to give us some good news.
Well, I can confirm that, yes, we will have a special guest, and we're going to save the announcement of who it is till the end of the show. Since we have nothing else for the very end of the show, we're going to save that announcement. But yes, we are going to be graced with the presence of one of the greatest baseball players ever to play the game. And he's going to come join us, and he's a huge wrestling fan too. So he's going to come and he's going to talk wrestling, and we're going to be a Houston Astros celebration on November 19th at Something to Wrestle With live at the House of Blues in Houston, Texas. And you can get your tickets just going over to boxofgimmicks.com to get tickets. Come on out and see us live and join this great Astros player as he joins us on stage and have us an awful lot of fun.
So there you go. I guess Bruce just wants to bury the lead. We're going to have an Astro at our show in Houston. So right before Survivor Series, come check us out, boxofgimmicks.com. And man, we have got quite the November planned for you. If you follow me on Twitter, hey, it's Conrad, you know what you're going to see for the next 3 weeks. There's no poll. We're just going to give you these 3 topics. Let me tell you what we've got coming down the pike. Next week, you're going to enjoy Bret Hart's 1996, 1997. Of course, we're going to get in some conversation about the Montreal Screwjob and how it all ended, but we're going to focus on him dropping the belt to Shawn, taking a little bit of a hiatus, coming back for that overseas tour, all the rumor and innuendo about his return, and then everything that happened for the entire heel turn. So you're going to get all the stuff you wanted to know about the Hart Foundation and him turning anti-American. All that is going to be in next week's show. Of course, we're going to talk about the movie. Everybody wants to know Wrestling with Shadows. Yes, we will address all of that as well. So mark your calendars. Tell your friends. I suspect it'll be our longest show ever. I'm just freestyling, but I'm already 50 pages of notes in. It's November 10th. No, November 17th, Survivor Series 2002. Now, this may be something you've been sleeping on, but let me tell you why we decided to do this one. First of all, it's the very first Elimination Chamber. There's no telling what type of silly impersonation Bruce is going to have to describe that one to us. But let me run through the rest of this card for you. And remember now, this is the 15-year anniversary, or thereabouts. We've got the Dudley Boys and Jeff Hardy taking on 3 Minute Warning and Rico. We've also got Billy Kidman taking on Jamie Noble. Anytime we get an opportunity to do a Jamie Noble impression here, we're going to. Victoria is taking on Trish Stratus. Big Show is taking on Brock Lesnar. Los Guerreros. We've had lots of requests about these guys. You're going to hear about them next week. Their opponents, well, how about this? Chris Benoit and Kurt Angle on one side, Edge and Rey Mysterio on the other. It's a triple threat elimination match for the WWE Tag Team titles. But then, here we are, the Elimination Chamber, and man, how fun is this? Shawn Michaels, in his return, wins the world title, and it's the big gold for the first time. He's going to be in there with Booker T, Chris Jericho, Kane, Rob Van Dam, and Triple H in the very first Elimination Chamber. So much stuff going on here. You don't want to miss it. Mark your calendars right now. That's going to be a super fun show. And we should remind you that this is also where we see Scott Steiner, the big booty daddy, Big Papa Pump, make his return to the WWE. Mark your calendars, boys and girls. November 17th is when that one's going down. But now let's get in our Wayback Machine. It's hard to believe this is a real thing, but it's the 30-year anniversary of Survivor Series 1987. This is going to be special. It's November 24th, and the reason it's special, not only is it the 30-year anniversary, but Bruce, this was your first pay-per-view, right?
It was my first pay-per-view, and it was the first time that I was ever really in charge, kind of at the gorilla position for a live event. So had a very interesting outlook on this, but just going back in the history and the whole planning and the reasonings behind doing the Survivor Series. First time WWF had ever done an event on Thanksgiving. So lot of backstage. I'm sure you're going to be calling a lot of bullshit on things that you just don't understand.
Yeah, here's what Bruce is talking about. They're trying to squash Starrcade here in the process, and Bruce has already given you a little bit of a spoiler. He's going to deny that. But this is something that we've wanted to cover for a long time. It's the very first non-WrestleMania pay-per-view for the company. It's the first time they're going head-to-head with Starrcade. It's Bruce's first. It's the 30-year anniversary. And there's lots of names on here. If you're a super old-school fan, we've never talked about Paul Orndorff, Oliver Humperdinck, Ken Patera, Don Morocco, Bam Bam Bigelow, Butch Reed, Andre the Giant, on and on and on. The Killer Bees, on down the line, man. Just take a look at this card and familiarize yourself with it, and then check it out with us. Watch it the week of or watch it with us. There's no telling what you might learn on Survivor Series 1987. So this is going to be one of the best months ever, man. Of course, today is the new Age Outlaws. Next week, Bret Hart's 96, 97. On the 17th, Survivor Series 02. And let's round out November on Survivor Series 1987 on November 24th. We're going to give you another poll on November 17th, and we're going to make one slight adjustment to the poll format. So pay attention, boys and girls. There's going to be a 1-week delay in the poll. So we're going to give you the poll on the 17th, and we're going to cover whatever wins on December 1st. So the polls, instead of ending on a Tuesday and the show airs on Friday, we're going to give ourselves a little more prep time. It's been absolute hell for me to get all of this done inside of 48 hours, but I've managed to do it for more than a year. I need a little bit more time. So the next poll will be on November 17th on that Survivor Series 02 episode. We'll tell you what the topics are. We'll throw the poll up, and you'll be able to hear it on December 1st. And now let's hear from some of our sponsors, like our friends over at Go Pro Wrestling.
Subscribe to the Go Pro Wrestling YouTube channel. Our friend Andrew posts new content every week, and currently on the Go Pro Wrestling YouTube channel, just added this week, are brand new interviews with Vince Russo, in which Russo shares his thoughts on NFL players striking, and the fight that Jim Cornette and Santino had at a convention a couple weeks ago. Also, a new interview with Ted DiBiase, who talks about his new documentary, stories of Andre the Giant, and so many more upcoming exclusive interviews you can watch only by subscribing to the Go Pro Wrestling YouTube channel. Just click that subscribe button and turn that notification bell on. All you have to do is subscribe to the Go Pro Wrestling YouTube channel. Our buddy Andrew is giving away free stuff every week to random subscribers. This week, a signed Lex Luger Elite action figure was mailed to Felix Cabrera of Houston, Texas. All you have to do is subscribe to the Go Pro Wrestling YouTube channel at youtube.com/GoProWrestling and turn those notifications on. Share the channel with your buddies online and show your support. They support us, why not support them? Plus, it's free. Subscribe to the Go Pro Wrestling YouTube channel at youtube.com/GoProWrestling.
Have you or someone you know been diagnosed with mesothelioma? You probably have many questions, such as, what should I do? Where can I get more information? RGT4Law.com can answer those questions and help you get the money you deserve. Call 855-RGT4Law or visit RGT4Law.com and fill out the simple form for a free consultation. Robert Taylor, RG Taylor II, PC and Associates, Houston, Texas.
All right, Bruce, we got all of our shit in, but now it's time for What Happened When the New Age Outlaws became a thing. Man, they set the business on fire, and they were such unlikely candidates to do so. One of the hottest eras in the history of wrestling. Wrestling's biggest boom. The locker room just jam-packed with Hall of Famers, and somehow the Roadie and Rockabilly became bona fide superstars, and we're going to explore that today. And long before, this whole badass Billy Gunn and the Road Dogg Jesse James thing happened, the Roadie and Jesse James were sort of limping along, barely mid-carders, and they've somehow transformed themselves into one of the best tag teams of all time. We've talked a lot about Road Dogg's career on our Jeff Jarrett show and how it first started with him coming into the company. So if you'd like to hear more about that, by all means, check out the Jeff Jarrett episode in the archives. One of our most downloaded shows of all time. But one of the things we talked about there, Bruce, and I've always been fascinated by this piece of history, Road Dogg actually walked out on the company with Jeff. And you mentioned that the WWF at the time sort of lost interest in bringing him back. So refresh everybody's memory. How does this come together where he's welcomed back into the fold?
Well, it was different time, different place, and Jeff was gone, and we weren't going to continue with Jeff, and Road Dogg pretty much didn't have anywhere to go. And Road Dogg was the one that had the talent as far as the singing chops. He sang that wonderful medley, spend my days working hard on the go, but the hands on the clock keep spinning too slow. I can't wait to be alone with my baby tonight. So, the thinking was to bring him back. His name is Brian James, but he went by Jesse a lot of times. So Jesse James, and that's Double J. So we called him the real Double J with the real talent, the real singer, and was a way to bring him back and hopefully capitalize on what we missed with the original Double J singing venture that we didn't get a payoff.
So when did you guys realize that he could sing? Obviously we know that was going to be the original payoff, but is that just a happy accident? I mean, who makes that discovery that this guy can actually sing? It feels like sort of a random talent.
Well, it is, but you always, whenever you interview guys, you ask them what they do. What's your hobbies, man? What do you like to do? What do you enjoy doing? And Stevie Armstrong as well is another one who was a hell of a singer. Them Armstrong boys can sing. They're some talented little sumbitches. And we knew that Steve could sing, and Brian we knew he could sing. He told us he could sing. So why not capitalize on that? And when his singing talents were tested, he proved that he had some chops there.
So chat me up when you're saying he said he could sing. I think we've all been curious. This whole, tell us about yourself, sort of learning about the actual talent. Is that a conversation that Vince is having, you're having, Pat's having? Who's sort of interviewing the talent to learn more about what their passions are and what they're good at?
Well, originally, a lot of times, Vince, it would depend. Vince and Pat would have conversations. Vince and I would have conversations, but we all tried to get to know the talent as much as we could. It's much easier to write for somebody when you know what makes them tick.
Right.
And if you know what their passions are and you can capitalize on that and make it larger than life, then it's a win-win for everybody. So you'd always would try to talk to talent and find out, what they were all about, man. What do you do in your off time? What is it that you go spend money on and you enjoy outside of work?
So chat me up. Road Dogg was like going to karaoke bars. Did he grow up singing in the church? Was he hanging with Pat Patterson? How does this singing thing develop?
Just something that he always did. And like I said, Steve, his brother, who we had brought in as Lance Cassidy, before, had also talked about singing, and we were going to make him the singing cowboy. And he is the original one that told us, and he was good. But he said, he goes, you ought to hear my brother Brian sing. And at the time, I think Brian was probably over in Desert Storm at the time.
Right.
But hadn't entered the business yet. And that always stuck with me. So you just hear things, man, and stick them. Some guys sing in the shower. And they sing around the boys, and everybody will say, boy, that son of a bitch has got some pipes on him. So hell, throw him in a recording studio.
Obviously it's been done to death in wrestling, with Sergeant Slaughter and various other acts like that. But when you've got a guy who was legitimately, in the war, like Road Dogg was there ever any consideration to giving him some sort of military gimmick?
There really wasn't. And don't ask me why. I think that there was something there that his original introduction as the Roadie, that it fit and it caught on, and it was something that worked. And we always figured that you have the military service to fall back on if you ever needed to fall back on that. To me, anybody who served in the military is a hero, and I think that that's always something you can fall back on and go with. But it was never really discussed.
That's just amazing to me. And I feel like we should just take a time out, because obviously we're going to talk about, silly promos and, the trials and tribulations that, maybe people had with different struggles in life. But we should just recognize for a minute that Brian served in the United States Marine Corps, and he was there from 87 to 93. He was in Desert Storm. He was a Marine, and he was a platoon sergeant. He's in command of like 50 some odd other Marines. So this is a guy who, and I know people think, he's got the crazy tattoo and the weird pitch and blah, blah, blah. Okay. But at the end of that, the dude is a badass and a natural leader. And he's shown that through real life. Wouldn't you agree?
Hell yes. And very proud of his country, and a great, in my opinion, I had the pleasure of speaking with him recently, and I just told him how proud I was of him overcoming all the obstacles, all the things that he has done in his life. And we'll address a lot of that in this show. But here's someone who was met with a lot of challenges, overcame them, and he is truly an American success story.
No doubt about it. And I know that, people are going to say we're kissing his ass because he did the intro or whatever.
I'll kiss his ass because he deserves it.
Well, that's what I was going to say is, hey, cool. Send your hate tweets to @Bruce Prichard. Hey, it's Conrad. I just know this is a business where, if you sit on the end of a bar stool and you bite somebody's face, you're a badass and everybody talks about you're a badass. But when you got a motherfucker who was in the war as a Marine and then led other Marines, let's not sleep on that as a true hero, a true badass, and a real leader. And I think sometimes people say, he had this situation or he had that circumstance or this was his character. And so they don't really get how he's been able to sort of move up in the ladder in WWE. Well, let's not sleep on the fact that, he was leading people in the fight of their lives once upon a time. So let's set the stage. But I just thought, hey, you know what? Guys are wrestling as G.I. Bro and, Corporal Kirshner and,
sure,
Sergeant Slaughter and all this. Here's a guy who really did it. Why wasn't that ever a consideration? And instead, hey, you move soundstage equipment and you're the secret singer. It's just an odd time in the WWE.
Well, and plus he was an entertainer. He was a natural entertainer, and he served that role. I think you could put Brian in just about any role, and I think that he would make it work.
We should briefly mention, there's going to be a lot of newer fans listening to this who maybe aren't totally in the loop. Brian comes from one of the more famous wrestling families in wrestling, but they're more Southern based. And there's so many of them that it's almost like, and I know I'm going to get tons of heat from our Canadian listeners for this, but the Armstrongs are almost like the Hart family below the Mason-Dixon line, in that Bullet Bob was a superstar and ran promotions and ran spot shows and ran territories and was a big deal everywhere he went. And then all of his sons seemingly got into the business. You've got Scott, Brad, Steve, and of course, Brian. And so there's this, it's just top to bottom, a wrestling family.
And Bullet Bob, sorry, folks, I hit the microphone. Sorry. And Bullet Bob, also a Marine and a fireman there in Marietta, Georgia. And another legit badass that was walking the streets. There was nobody better than Bob Armstrong in his day.
It's just interesting that this has kind of worked the way it has, where, so many of those folks had such great success. I think a lot of people are familiar that Scott Armstrong actually works with the WWE as a referee. And we recently passed the 5-year anniversary. Actually, as we're taping this, it was yesterday, of Brad Armstrong passing away. And his brother Brad has actually been talked about as being one of the greatest there ever was behind the scenes. Of course, we all know as wrestling fans, in the ring, it'd be hard to beat Brad Armstrong. He was one of the most talented in-ring performers ever. But they say behind the scenes, and I never had the pleasure of meeting him, Bruce, but that Brad just kept the locker room in stitches and had natural charisma. But for some reason, when the red light came on, it just wasn't really there. Did you have any interaction with Brad over the years?
Oh, yeah, I knew Brad really well. And Brad was my brother Tom's best friend ever in the wrestling business. And Brad and Tom go way back. And so, of course, I've known Brad for many, many years. Brad was probably one of the best natural workers inside the ring. Everybody loved to work with Brad Armstrong. He was smooth, he was believable, and could do anything. Outside of the ring in the locker room, he was hilarious, witty, and just a genuinely really good guy. The issue with Brad was, unfortunately, in front of the camera, when you wanted to get that personality, that wit out of him, and what was so engaging about him out of the ring, it was tough to do because he was brought up in the wrestling business, and I think in his mind was fixated on being that wrestling babyface character,
right,
that he knew traditionally. But I tell you what, man, one of the finest people I ever had the pleasure of knowing.
One of our mutual friends this week told me, who was great friends with Brad, told me that one of his favorite ribs to pull back in the day would be he would take his penis and put it over his wrist and try to ask you what time it was.
What?
No comment? Come on, that's fucking
What
hilarious.
the hell?
I laughed at that. Okay.
Of course you did. Of course you. What time is it, Conrad? Here. Here.
That's so
Can
funny.
you see? Can you see all the way over there in Alabama? Can you see what time it is?
Yeah, it's time for you to get a razor. That's what time it is. Hey, so let's talk about, now that we've established exactly where his family is and who he is, it's no surprise that this guy just oozes charisma and has a natural, just wrestling's in his DNA, man. With a dad like Bullet Bob, who's in the Hall of Fame, one of the most underrated performers of all time. And Brad, of course, we know Steve had a great run in WCW with Tracy Smothers as a tag team. One of my favorite matches of all time is Great American Bash 1990, where the wild-eyed Southern boys, the Young Pistols, take on the Midnight Express. And of course, Scott is a referee now who's still working all these years later in the business. So that's kind of a wrestling dynasty. Meanwhile, Billy Gunn takes a totally different route to getting here to become a New Age Outlaw. He has actually been with the company a while. He comes in May of 93 with his kayfabe brother Bart, and they're here as the Smoking Guns. We've talked about them a little bit in the past, Bruce, but we've never really talked about how they came in and whose idea the cowboy gimmick was.
Well, Billy and Bart were working in Orlando for Eddie Mansfield's, I think it was the Continental Wrestling Federation, but maybe I'm just thinking that because Eddie Mansfield was Continental lover, baby. Actually, it was the Universal Wrestling Federation, something like that. But Eddie Mansfield was doing television tapings there, and I saw their stuff and saw Billy and Bart there. They were doing a cowboy gimmick already, so reached out to them. We brought them in. They were comfortable with the cowboy gimmick, and it seemed to fit them because they both looked like two big, strapping cowboys that you would expect to see at any rodeo anywhere in the world. And the deceiving thing about it that always struck me funny is how big Bart and Billy both are. Both of these guys are like 6'4", 6'5", and just wide and solid and just deceivingly big. I think that was the first thing that people, whenever they'd meet him in person for the first time, were like, damn, you're a tall drink of water there, big boy.
Yeah, and that was kind of my impression. I met Billy Gunn once before, and I was kind of shocked to see that, and I might be wrong here. I think Billy Gunn's like the same height as Hulk Hogan.
Yeah, probably so.
That to
He's
me,
a big boy.
It just in my head, I assume, Hulk Hogan is a much larger man than Billy Gunn. Turns out, maybe not so much. The Smoking Guns had a pretty good run, man. They go in to win the tag team titles on 3 separate occasions. And towards the end of their run, they shave off their porn stashes and cut off the mullets, and they're heel, and they're managed by Sonny. What was I'm sure we might have an episode. I shouldn't say I'm sure. Maybe we'll have a Smoking Guns episode one day. Why were they turned heel? How did they feel about working with Sonny? What can you tell about that?
As far as them turning heel was, we had gone as far as we could go with them as baby faces at that time. And the crowd, the audience for the most part, I think it kind of sickened of that gimmick,
right?
And sickened of the goody two shoes cowboy thing. So let's try and turn them and stick Sonny, the dastardly heel, with them and see if we can get anything out of it. We'll put them on a poll one time.
Yeah, I know we're going to get a question about this at some point, so I want to ask here. They do a breakup and have a singles match on Raw where Bart hits him with a stun gun on the top rope and Billy just lays there and doesn't move. And they have his wife come down with a bunch of officials. Was that his real wife?
I believe it was. Yeah.
So the angle here is just to tell a story where one has injured the other and just sort of make this thing a blood feud, right?
Yes. And yeah, put him out of the business and oh my God. And put his wife there so that we had that recognition so that when she's pleading for him to quit and how could you do this? So made a little more sense.
When you guys were first doing this split, obviously you saw singles potential in both of them. Who did you guys think, who did the company think would be the bigger star of the two?
We really didn't know. So that's why we did the split and we kind of put them both on equal footing at the time to see who's going to rise to the occasion. But we thought that Bart had a little bit more natural heel tendencies. Boy, were we wrong there. Billy's just a natural heel. He's heel through and through. I love him to death. But just try something different. And that's what we were thinking at the time.
So I'm sure we're going to talk about, the run that Billy had as a single, in subsequent years. But Bart's didn't really do too much until the Brawl for All happened in, summer of 98. He wouldn't really be used much after that tournament until WrestleMania. And then he was knocked out in 35 seconds by Butterbean. And we've actually covered that, in the archive. So if you'd like to hear more about Brawl for All, by all means, check it out in the archives. From here, though, Billy would eventually become Rockabilly and managed by the Honky Tonk Man. This seems really, really out of place given the era that we're sort of ushering in with the WWF at the time. So I wouldn't be me if I didn't ask, who booked this shit?
God damn, pal. What if the Honky Tonk Man came and managed him and we gave him a rockabilly gimmick? He has no rhythm. He can't sing. It'll be perfect.
Wait. Are you suggesting that this was Vince McMahon's idea?
Yeah, it was.
Oh my God.
Well, and unfortunately, this is how some things happen sometimes. We're going with a singles run. You're trying to figure out different things to do with guys. And Vince thought that Honky could contribute as a manager. Entertaining, great promo. Maybe he can help some young guys get over. So it was more of a vehicle to bring Honky Tonk Man back and get Honky on TV than it was, what do we do with Billy Gunn? So the fact that, cause Billy really didn't have any rhythm and couldn't sing or dance if his life depended on it. So to bill him as the next big thing in this rockabilly deal, in a perverse way, that makes sense.
Man, that's amazing to me that we finally hear the truth, that this was really just a vehicle to get Honky Tonk Man back. What did Vince, obviously, and let me be clear, I'm not disparaging the good goddamn name of the Honky Tonk Man. I know I'm going to get hate tweets about that because he was over. I'm not arguing any of that.
Greatest Intercontinental Champion of all time, baby. Just
ask him. I guess my question is, what did Vince see the upside being? This is a character who had seemingly, he's from a time gone by. He's from 10 years ago, and he was super over 10 years ago. Was Vince still stuck in that it worked then, it'll work now type of thinking? I mean, are you guys just a bunch of yes men sitting around saying, oh yeah, fucking Honky Tonk Man, that makes sense?
No, we didn't have anything for Billy, and the sell was that Honky Tonk Man might be able to help get him over. And maybe with Honky doing the talking, because Billy wasn't the greatest promo guy in the world. Still isn't. But with Honky doing the talking, that we thought that it might be able to give Billy an opportunity to get over and get some shine on him and get some of that to rub off. It wasn't to get Honky over. It was to use Honky, bring him back, and hopefully get Billy over in the process.
How do you think it worked?
Dinner Kelsey's nuts.
I mean, what's the plan?
Motherfucker.
Thank you for that. I just know whenever you start doing that voice, I'm just waiting for it.
And I'm waiting for you, motherfucker.
Thank you. What were the plans, man? I mean, I just imagine Vince sitting around when he's coming up with this idea And then somehow, and you sort of gave us a peek into that last week or 2 weeks ago when you talked about that you guys thought maybe Doink could headline a WrestleMania and make it like a circus themed WrestleMania. And that just sounds so fucking ridiculous to us fans, but it gives us a peek into the mind of Vince McMahon. Does Vince like sort of, she uses hands in the air, like, so creating a visualization, Rockabilly, the World Wrestling Federation champion. I mean, does he see that?
Absolutely. See, as absurd as it sounds, you know, and I've said this a million times, and people always think I'm crazy, and then they'll come up with the most ridiculous anecdote that they can come up with to say, oh, well, that'll never work. And it's not. But at the same time, as talent producers and talent scouts, we would always look at, and I used to get this directive from Vince all the time, that when I was in charge of talent relations and looking at things, and I would go out and I would say, hey, this guy's a hell of a hand, and this guy's a great worker, or this guy's a little different, maybe we can use him. And Vince would say to me, he goes, I don't care. Can you see him headlining WrestleMania?
Right.
And when you go out and you scout and view talent from that perspective of, can I see them at the press conference at the Harley Davidson Cafe promoting WrestleMania with every news agency in the world there? Can I see them on the billboard pulling up to the stadium in the main event? And as crazy as it sounds, yeah, you sometimes have to go through that exercise because there are a lot of great hands out there. There are a lot of guys he's a good little worker. Vince doesn't care.
Right.
Can they put it all together? Can they be a good little worker? Can they be larger than life? And can they talk people into the seats to part with their money and pay to come on in and watch me perform? So as a talent scout, that's kind of how we looked at it. And yeah, you did have to go to the absurd sometimes, and you did have to go to the extremes and think, could this work? And yeah, they would. You had to look at it like that.
So, I mean, obviously Billy Gunn, big strapping dude, as we said, Hulk Hogan size almost. I get that you could see him, but you thought this Rockabilly gimmick, man, we're going to get this on Regis and Kathy Lee. This shit's getting over.
You never know. Stranger things have happened.
No, stranger things have not happened. Rockabilly.
Yes, they have.
So here's what's interesting to me. These guys are actually...
Dude, you weren't sitting in my office today. Strange things have happened, okay?
You know, what's great is, even though we ran through that 15-minute segment at the beginning of the show, just putting ourselves over, there's about 15 more minutes that we're not ready to announce yet that's going to just blow people's fucking mind. Like, it's still crazy to me that a wrestling podcast has caught on like it has. So thank you guys for making Bruce and I's life very, very enjoyable this week. We have been grinning like a possum all week. Now these guys are actually working together, and I think that's kind of funny. I maybe had blocked that out, maybe as a painful memory. They're working together in house shows very often, and allegedly they go to Vince Russo because they're not happy with their individual gimmicks. And this isn't like a one-time visit with Vince. This is often. They don't like the real Double J. They don't like Rockabilly. And somehow, according to the rumor and innuendo, Bruce, Russo decides to put them together as a tag team. And Road Dogg has said that the Outlaws were sort of one of Russo's first projects, and he credits his writing to a lot of their success. But Russo has a different story. He says it's actually Vince McMahon who put the Outlaws together, and Russo said himself that he just didn't see anything in them at the time. Set the record straight. How do you remember this pairing coming together, and whose brainchild is this originally?
Well, okay. And the way I remember it, and Russo didn't see anything in him and didn't see anything in him, obviously individually as the real Double J or as Rockabilly. And they'd come together. The first time that I remember the suggestion for the pairing was from Shawn Michaels, and Shawn was pitching Vince McMahon and myself that, hey, these two guys, put them together as a tag team, their personalities, they complement each other, they're friends, and they would make a great tag team. So let's, you should try them, and they're not going anywhere as a singles. So try them as a tag team.
Right.
And they had pitched it, and Vince McMahon loved it. And he thought that was a way to be able to get their personalities out of them and let them go. But I also do have to give, again, God, what is this world coming to? 2 weeks in a row that I'm going to praise Vince Russo.
Listen.
Russo was responsible for a lot of the writing and helping the New Age Outlaws, even though he didn't see it,
right?
Didn't believe in it. He helped it. That's another example of it. He helped it, and he did help it get over.
So Billy Gunn has a different recollection. He says the first time they were put together, they were supposed to do a run-in during the Undertaker-Shawn Michaels match, and they're actually on their way out when they hear from the back that they're not supposed to go out yet. They're too soon. So they have to stop and sort of kill time in front of the crowd until it's time to go. And then the next week, they were put together as a team, and this was sort of a rib on them. Do you remember this pairing being like a rib, and that's how it blossomed?
No, it was not a rib. Jesus Christ.
Well,
yeah. And to the guy that got on you about the damn polls, I'm sorry, I'm digressing here and sidebarring. When people think that, hey, folks, the Facebook polls, the Twitter polls, all that stuff, it's not a work. It's actually lazy on our part because we want you to decide what the subject matter is. Conrad went ahead and did the extra work to do these anniversary shows coming up, but there's no reason to work a poll. We actually like to know what you have to say. And I don't know why you can't see how many votes or whatever, but no, we don't work the polls anyway.
Well,
going back to this,
you can see the results at the end. I don't know how you got on this sidebar, but when we first moved the poll,
I'll tell you how, because it's the same as was it a rib on them to put them together? No, it wasn't a rib on them.
Well, and
it was,
it's not a rib that you actually call people when you pick up a shirt over at brucepritchard.com, is it?
Absolutely. And it's also not a rib that you and I are thinking about 2020 running.
I can't believe this is a real thing, but there's actually a Prichard Thompson 2020 t-shirt that's available right now at brucepritchard.com. I mean, I guess stranger things have happened.
Well, hey, dude, I used to be over.
And you're over again now, man. And if I wanted to hook you, you'd be hooked. Rib 'em, doot. Hey, pal, then the bell rang. George the Rat. Everything you've been looking for is available at Friday Noon's main event. #1 t-shirt site is brucepritchard.com. And when you pick up a shirt, Bruce actually calls and personally thanks you. And I don't know how many other people are doing that now, but I know who did it first. And you're going to love getting a call from Brother Love. Pick up a shirt right now. It's brucepritchard.com. And by the way, this makes an excellent Christmas present for any wrestling fan friends you may have, because here's what you can do to really make it a cool experience. Put their phone number in. When you pick up a shirt, actually put their phone number in. And when Bruce Prichard gives them a call, if they answer, they get a surprise call from Bruce. If they don't answer, it might even be better. They get a voicemail from Brother Love himself. It's a cool deal. It's the best present you can give a wrestling fan. Pick it up right now, brucepritchard.com. Let's talk about what's next, I guess, because we see the October 4th, 1997 edition of Shotgun Saturday Night, and the Outlaws are here officially formed as a tag team. After another loss by Rockabilly, James comes out and asks him to dump Honky Tonk Man and team up with him. Rockabilly responds by smashing the guitar over Honky's head. Chat me up. I love Shotgun Saturday Night. I hope we cover more of this in the future. The initial idea of Shotgun Saturday Night was super fun. Is at this point, by October, the experiment with Honky Tonk done? Was he under a contract? Was he on a per appearance deal? What are the plans with Honky at this point?
There were no long-term plans. I know Vince was thinking about possibly doing something with him in a commentary role and some different things, but Honky knew when he came in that it wasn't a long-term deal and that he was simply being brought in to enhance Billy and see if he could get Billy to the next level. And I think that knowing Honky, that Honky probably felt, my job's done here, baby. I got that guy over. Great Intercontinental Champion all the time.
Yeah, I can't wait for us to do a Honky Tonk Man show. Chat me up about the guys here when they realize, hey, they're going to get an opportunity to team together. Is this something that they're looking forward to? Just anything to get rid of their current gimmick? They really enjoy working with each other. What details do you remember about these guys first being put together and the way that was talked about in the back with creative and how they specifically responded?
Like kids in a toy store.
Really?
Tickled to death, excited, and what was something new. And I think that both of them saw this as an opportunity to just go beyond what the hell they were doing then. And they also, and again, this is me outside looking in on them. I think that they knew that Sean had endorsed them, and Sean was a big proponent of these guys. And so Sean was helping them. So they not only knew that Vince was excited about it, but they're saying, hey, Sean's excited about this and Sean's helping us. Sean's in our ear, giving us different stuff to do and helping us out on this deal. So that excitement added to the new gig.
So one of the things that you guys did different with them, and I think this is lost on a lot of people, is very early on, you know, they don't have entrance music. They actually just start attacking other teams, and Road Dogg would start talking on the mic as they made their way to the ring. Whose idea was that? Because it certainly makes them feel a lot different to not come out to theme music and talk the whole way to the ring. That combination is something nobody had ever seen before, much less individually.
I think it was Road Dogg's idea to do the promo on the way out. And I think it was Russo's thing to, okay, hey, you say you can talk, go do this. The oh, you didn't know was something that he did. The your ass better call somebody. That came from Ernie Ladd, was get on the phone and call somebody, let him know the big cat Ernie Ladd is on his way to town. And that was kind of ripping that off. And we used to do that a lot, but it was different. It was unique to them. And it was something different that nobody else was doing at the time.
It's been said that the whole, oh, you didn't know thing was actually something that was done just to sort of pop Brian Lee and try to make him laugh. And it just stuck. So it makes sense that what you're saying was really something you guys kind of said behind the scenes.
And the reason that it stuck was because the audience was just so in tune to what the hell we were doing during that time, that the audience was engaged. And so as soon as you would hear, you know, because you would hear later on that now, the audience, even before Road Dogg started, they would do it. Oh, you didn't know?
Well,
and so as soon as they heard his voice before the music, they would do it with him.
I don't even know that I knew this until we're talking about it, but I may have subconsciously been doing that the entire time with my, what happened when? Because it's this over the top enunciation that Road Dogg was doing with, oh, you didn't know, that maybe that, I mean, who knows? Right. So,
well, you know,
did you guys, what was the original plan? You know, when you guys put them together, it feels like at this time, you know, and I think a lot of people get what I'm getting at here, a team that's packaged like Demolition or the Hart Foundation or the Rockers. So, you know, it's one team name and then it's similar outfits, you know, that whole deal is kind of the way tag teams had been presented. And even during this era, you've got like 8-Ball and Skull and Crush and the Bariquas and the Truth Commission. You've got lots of people who are sort of dressed similarly. And now you've got two single stars and you're putting them together and they don't really have a name. And they don't dress alike and their style's not the same. And you're familiar with them as single stars. Normally those pairings have a short shelf life. We're going to put them together just long enough to create a storyline and then break them up. That's not the way this turned out though. Was that the original plan? Let's just pair them together long enough to have them feud again.
The original plan simply was to be able to give a different look to the whole tag team scene. These were two young guys. They were kind of cool and they were kind of hip. They were different. And it wasn't that same old tag team. Everybody look exactly alike and we work exactly alike. They each had their own identity and they were young and cool and hip. And then it became, again, with Sean kind of in their corner, you know, where we eventually got to the whole DX thing and being a part of that. But it was because of they were unique. They weren't from that same cloth of the traditional tag teams. And I think that's what made them stick out.
It's worth mentioning too, you know, and I think a lot of people just assume because he's sort of behind the scenes, people assume that he's actually older. But Road Dogg is like a year and a half older than Chris Jericho. he at the time, he's 48 now. He at the time would have been 28 years old, and Billy Gunn would have been 33. And I know, you know, time is a weird thing, but to hear that sort of plan and the pop and the reaction they're going to get, and they're in their late 20s and early 30s, it's a pretty rare deal in professional wrestling.
But it worked, and it was something that, hey, man, they were ready for it. The audience was ready for something different. And it just worked. It was a good pairing.
Where does the name come from? Road Dogg, and then Badass, and then of course it would be Mr. Ass. Where does that come from, and who would have thought of the New Age Outlaws as a name?
Well, Road Dogg came from Brian being the roadie, and it was just kind of just short of, hey, Road Dogg, you know, that old Southern thing. You don't say, what's up, dog? And he became Road Dogg. It just was something that stuck on. And Billy, being Badass, Billy Gunn, it was something to help that introduction kind of fit. So he became, Badass Billy Gunn. And then eventually, as a joke, you know, they just referred to him as Mr. Ass, because if his first name is Bad, last name is Ass, then if you were to address him properly, you would call him Mr. Ass.
Oh my gosh. I don't know. It's just awesome. Cause as you say that, I think about our Macho Man episode where you were telling people that he would tell people to read his boots. And I just imagine
first name Macho, last name Man. Dig it, freak out. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
October 18th, 1997, we see Shotgun Saturday Night. Billy Gunn and the Road Dogg defeat the New Blackjacks. A couple of days later on Raw, they get a win over the Headbangers. A week later on Raw, the New Blackjacks defeat Road Dogg and Billy Gunn by DQ. And a week after that, Road Dogg and Billy Gunn get a win over Los Boricuas. It's a pretty interesting pairing, but it also tells you that there's not super huge plans when at the time they're wrestling the New Blackjacks, Los Boricuas, it doesn't feel, you know, when they're wrestling on Shotgun Saturday Night that there's a huge plan for them. And this is around the time when they start using the name, the New Age Outlaws. And this takes us to our first pay-per-view. Ironically, one of the most famous pay-per-views of all time, the 20-year anniversary coming up next week, Survivor Series 1997. And so much happened at that show. I don't know that a lot of people even recognized that was their first pay-per-view together. The Outlaws would team with the Godwins to take on the Headbangers and the New Blackjacks. It was a traditional Survivor Series elimination style match. The New Age Outlaws, of course, were the sole survivors and winners of the match. And then the following night, they would defeat Bradshaw in a handicap match. A week after that, they're working with Los Boricuas. And now here we go. November 24th, 1997, they defeat the Legion of Doom to win the tag team titles. Coming to the ring for this match, Road Dogg and Billy Gunn are actually wearing the Legion of Doom shoulder pads, which they had previously stolen. And Road Dogg says, "What a flush," to knock off the famous "Oh, what a rush." Kind of an interesting tidbit here. During the match, JR gave a plug for the ECW pay-per-view, which was coming up the following weekend, November to Remember 97. And after they get the win, Gunn and Road Dogg quickly run up the ramp and out of the arena and literally run out to their car. And JR said they look like bank robbers leaving the bank in their getaway car. How did LOD feel about losing the titles to the Outlaws, a fairly new tag team who had previously not been top guys as single stars? And LOD, 10 years prior to this, were arguably two of the biggest stars in the business.
Well, I think at the time they're not really going to have a problem with it. And you look at the talent of each guy individually and then combined as a tag team, they're two talented guys, and everybody's going to have that first time for that big push. And they realized that this was the first time for the big push for the New Age Outlaws. So I don't think that Joe and Mike had any problem putting these guys over and giving them that rub to the next level. They knew what they needed to get to that next level. And frankly, the Legion of Doom knew that for them to have credible opponents, they had to put somebody over, and these two guys could go.
Yeah. And it's an interesting time in the company too, because you guys had sort of refocused on the tag team division, but there weren't a lot of stars, but obviously the Road Warriors were a big deal. And nobody knows that more than Road Dogg. This was Billy Gunn's fourth time as tag champ, but this is Road Dogg's first time as champ, first time holding gold in the company here. So it's a big deal to him growing up in the business. And he's probably marking out as a kid who grew up in Georgia. They just beat the fucking Road Warriors. Kind of a big deal. There's a rumor that when they're driving from town to town, Road Dogg would actually prop his belt up in the back of his car. So like people who were behind him and as they're passing them would see the tag belt. And allegedly he even wore the belt through some airports. Can you confirm this rumor and innuendo about how tickled Road Dogg was to be tag champ for the first time?
I can definitely can confirm the wearing the belt in the airport. That I can confirm. But doesn't everybody put their championship on the back window so everybody knows? I mean, otherwise, how the hell do you know when you're driving? You can't wear it while you're driving, so you got to put it in the window so everybody knows champ coming through. Dude.
Not long after they win the titles, JR started referring to them as the Outlaws on TV. And at this point, the name is sticking. It's the new Age Outlaws. In Your House, the Generation X was December 6th, and they would get the win over the Legion of Doom. They were retaining here by DQ. A couple of weeks after that, Dude Love is in singles action against Road Dogg in a no contest. And this actually starts an angle, which would have Cactus Jack bring in a partner to feud with the Outlaws. And of course, that partner we know would be Terry Funk. Although he's not called Terry Funk, he's actually Chainsaw Charlie. Hypothetically, I imagine Jim Cornette was pitching this. Am I right, Bruce?
Goddamn. Everybody knows you put somebody in, they come out of a fucking box, you're goddamn over.
You gonna tell me anything about
Motherfucker?
Thank you. What about Chainsaw Charlie, Jimmy?
Chainsaw Charlie was the stupidest fucking gimmick ever heard. Oh, wait a minute. That was Terry's idea? I fucking love it, motherfucker.
Yeah, I've always been fascinated by that. I'm sure we'll talk about it some other time, but let's briefly touch on it here. Terry Funk, the NWA World Champion himself, from one of the greatest wrestling families of all time, didn't want to be called Terry Funk here. He wanted to be called Chainsaw Charlie and wear pantyhose over his head.
I was called at the office one day and asked to call Terry Funk and asked Terry if he would like to come in and team with Cactus and explain the whole angle to him and explain what we were doing with the Outlaws and so on and so forth, and thought it would be really cool to bring Terry in. And Terry had an idea. Prichard, what if I came back and I'll tell you a story? And damn it, the name escapes me. And if you go back, what the heck? I told this story before of his childhood friend who had passed due to cancer, and it was an homage to him. But Terry and his buddy used to go to the barber shop, and they called the barber Chainsaw Charlie. And what if I came back as Chainsaw Charlie? And I just had like hose on my head and a whole goddamn outfit. They'll never know, but they'll know because I'm crazy. Like, okay. It was his idea, and I thought it was interesting. Fuck, I liked it. It's Terry Funk, man. Let him do what the hell he wants.
If you want to hear more about that story, it's in our fully loaded 1998 episode. In the main event of this Raw, we see LOD face Shawn Michaels and Triple H in the main event, and the Outlaws here would interfere, causing a DQ. But in the process, they shave Hawk's head, and then DX powerbombs Animal from the ring through the announcer's table at ringside. So it's a little bit of a glimpse into the future with the Outlaws working with DX. And this is done obviously to sort of give the Outlaws the rub. Not only are they squashing Legion of Doom and embarrassing them and humiliating them, but they're doing it with two top guys, Shawn Michaels and Triple H. At this point, Hawk has been...
And if I may interrupt you real quick, and the one other thing, if you go back and you watch that, you'll see Shawn and Hunter kind of leaning on the ropes and doing the old finger on the lip, like they're in deep thought, like, that might be two good additions to DX. Just a little subtle, as you say, a precursor to what may come. And I'm sorry I interrupted you.
No, listen, I think it was a cool angle here because Hawk is really, I mean, both of these guys are really identified by the face paint, the shoulder pads, and the crazy hair. And to have someone shave Hawk's hair, it's a pretty big deal. Obviously, it's not the long flowing mane, but it is a very identifiable haircut. And it's really well done here. There's been a lot of stories at the time about Shawn Michaels and Triple H and the Clique and politicking at the time. How do these guys curry favor with Shawn Michaels and Triple H for this association? Is this something that Triple H is pushing for, Shawn's pushing for, Vince is pitching? Talk us through how that all comes together.
I think it just all comes from the Shawn watching these two guys on the house show, pitching that they should be together. And then when they got together, looking at them and they had attitude and everything that they did and thinking, hey, what if they joined us? It's got two new guys that can go out there and take bumps and fight for us. So it just was an accumulation and the fact that the Outlaws were getting over and Shawn recognizing it. Best of my recollection was Shawn's idea to bring him into DX and have them be a part of it.
December 29th, 1997, we see Cactus Jack defeat Road Dogg by DQ. And this is where we see Chainsaw actually make his official debut. The big box we talked about, of course, Cactus and the Outlaws fight up to it. Cactus rams Road Dogg into it. These chainsaw noises start, and here he comes. January 5th, 1998.
I'm sorry. I can't just let that go. If you go back and you watch the debut of Chainsaw Charlie, you'll notice that when Terry gets down to the ring, Chainsaw Charlie gets down to the ring, the gimmick is that you, with a chainsaw, is you fixate the chain on the saw. And you can have, you dull the blades. And so when you hit something metal or something like that, sparks are going to come off. So you think it looks like a live chainsaw, which it is kind of a live chainsaw, but if you wouldn't get cut with it. So Terry goes down to the ring and we walk through this damn thing during the day and all this other crap, man. And we do it perfectly and it makes the sparks and all that good stuff. So Terry gets out there and he starts the chainsaw and he cuts through and he's got the real chainsaw to cut through the box. And we cut through that and make sure that that's all good. And then we hand him the gimmick chainsaw to take out. Well, when Terry gets to the ring, he holds the chainsaw up over his head. And when he does this, there's gasoline in the chainsaw. And the gasoline is just coming down on Terry's face and all over his arm. And he's wearing that long red long john. He's got the pantyhose on his head. And he's now being doused in gasoline. So on top of not being able to see through the pantyhose and the powder, he's now being doused in gasoline. So he can't see because he's got gasoline in his eyes. And he's hitting the chainsaw on the post to make sparks. And our safety guys in the back going, oh my God, he's going to go up in flames if one of those sparks gets in the gasoline. And Terry is absolutely clueless to this and just, oh God damn, isn't this great? Well, he almost died about 100 times.
Well, I think we're all glad he didn't. It would have been one more retirement, right?
There you go.
January 5th, 1998, the Outlaws get a win over the Headbangers, and we're off and running. Through the rest of January, these guys are working pretty steady. Legion of Doom, Cactus, and Charlie. They even do a four-way with the Headbangers, the Godwins, and a Truth Commission. But as we cruise into February, it's Cactus Jack versus Chainsaw Charlie, and there's a dumpster at the top of the ramp. It's obviously not there for show. It's going to be used. And the New Age Outlaws attack these guys, lock them in a dumpster, and push it off the stage. And JR is proclaiming several times, there's people in there. There's
people in there. There's people in there. Good God. Sassafras.
Whose idea was the dumpster? I mean, I know we can poke holes in this, but as a kid, man, I thought this was awesome.
I think it was Vince McMahon's idea. I remember going out and rehearsing this damn thing and trying to make it safe for Mick and Terry in there. And I remember looking at it the first time and crawling in there and just thinking, this is crazy. I mean, this is insane because there's not really a safe way to do this. And we finally did. We padded the whole thing up. Terry just wanted to take the bump. Terry and Cactus didn't care. They were like, no, we'll be fine. I'll hold Cactus. He'll hold me. And as long as we don't land on our heads, we'll be all right. But Vince was steadfast. He wanted it to be safe. And so they put a lot of padding and put some stuff for them to hold on to in there so that no matter how they went, they would still be safe and not land on their damn heads. But it was scary. I mean, that was some scary stuff. Even knowing that there's padding in there, knowing that there's, safety measures have been taken. We were still scared to death because we only had one shot at it.
Hypothetically speaking, if things had gone wrong and the Outlaws felt bad about pushing these guys off the ramp in a dumpster and they wanted to try to cheer up old Cactus and Chainsaw, you got any suggestions as to how they could have done that?
Well, I would suggest that the best thing to do is just head on over to proflowers.com.
And the really cool thing about proflowers.com is this is perfect for any occasion. This could just be something for a fall occasion. Maybe you need an arrangement for Thanksgiving. Maybe you just want to do something for their birthday. Maybe you know somebody obsessed with scented candles or pumpkin spice. Any of that stuff is available at proflowers.com because you're going to look good, you're going to smell good. And my favorite thing about ProFlowers, Bruce, and I hear this every time I use them, the lady I send them to says, these flowers lasted forever. Before I discovered ProFlowers, I would just order from my local place, and man, the flowers are dead just a couple of days later. It feels like these doggone things from ProFlowers have been engineered to last for weeks. It's unbelievable. But really what's cool about proflowers.com is now, man, you can actually go ahead and enjoy something called cinnamon cider roses. I think every girl in my life loves pumpkin spice, and this is kind of the next best thing, man. Your house is going to smell like cinnamon cider. This stuff is awesome, especially for birthdays, anniversaries, any fall occasions. You can't go wrong with one of the classics either. My go-to is 100 autumn blooms, or maybe a dozen autumn roses. There's more to life than just those reds and whites. Let's get a little color in your life, boys and girls. But you can't lose no matter which bouquet you send, because you're going to get a special deal right here because you listen to Bruce Prichard. Right, Bruce?
Hell yeah. Let someone know that you love them and get 20% off all bouquets of $29 or more simply by going to proflowers.com and using my code WWE at checkout. It's proflowers.com and code WWE. It is a perfect way to say, I love you. Go ahead. Don't wait to make somebody's day.
Let me just tell you too, if you're having some trouble at the house, back at the ranch, this is the best $29 you can spend. This is like a get out of jail free card. If you came in too late, if you had a little too much fun on football Sunday, if your wife's not happy because you forgot to cut the grass or whatever you got going on in your life, $29 and you're out of the doghouse, it's hard to beat. This show is by guys, for guys, and we're looking out for you. Here's a pro tip. Do what we do. Get 20% off an already incredible deal. Spend $29 and get 20% off. Hook it up. Proflowers.com and use that code WWE. And when you do, go ahead and screenshot it and send it to us. We're at Prichard Show. He is at Bruce Prichard. And I am at Hey, it's Conrad. And we want to make sure that all of our listeners get where they need to be and out of the doghouse and into some Roll Tide.
Has Larry Thompson been smartened up to this whole proflowers.com? Because I got the feeling that Larry Thompson every once in a while needs to surprise Deborah with some flowers over at proflowers.com.
Well,
just saying.
I'm just saying, here's what Deborah Thompson knows. Those dudes are going to last. They even guarantee these flowers for 7 days or your money back. Call up your local florist and be like, hey, what's your money back guarantee? They're going to laugh and hang up the damn phone. Not proflowers.com. They're going to hook you up, especially when you use that code WWE. You get 20% off and they last. Get you some of that good loving, son. Get it. Proflowers.com. Use that code WWE. So next week, February 2nd, Steve Austin defeats the Road Dogg by DQ and Owen gets a win over Billy by DQ. So even though they're a tag team, they're still doing some singles matches here and there. And the tag champs, the New Age Outlaws, are on Shotgun Saturday night to defeat the Superstars, Flash Funk and Tom Brandy, to retain their titles. And then they're on their way to the No Way Out pay-per-view on February 15th. Check this lineup out. I can't believe this is real. Cactus Jack, Chainsaw Charlie, Steve Austin, and Owen Hart are on the same team. and they defeat Billy Gunn, Road Dogg, Savio Vega, and Triple H in a tag team no DQ match. And Shawn Michaels was originally supposed to be in this match, but his back injury forced him out, so Savio Vega took his place. Any memories of how this went down, and why was Vega the guy to fill Shawn's spot?
Savio was the go-to guy, man. Savio could fit any spot at any time. He was the utility that if you needed somebody in any role whatsoever, you could just kind of slide him in. No real reason other than he didn't have anything going on, and he could work his ass off, and everybody always loved to work with Savio.
It's amazing, too, when you think about what could have been here, because you've really got DX with Billy Gunn, Road Dogg, Triple H, and Shawn Michaels. On the other side, Cactus Jack, Terry Funk, Steve Austin, Owen Hart. Holy cow, what a lineup, what could have been. Of course, The Undertaker has this match with Shawn Michaels at the Royal Rumble. It's a casket match, and Shawn Michaels' life was forever changed, and we're going to cover that this January. Don't miss it. It's going to be one of our best episodes ever. On the February 23rd edition of Raw, the Outlaws defeat the Legion of Doom to retain, and then we're spending the rest of March prepping for WrestleMania 14, and that's where we really get cooking, man. Cactus Jack and Chainsaw Charlie defeat the New Age Outlaws to win the tag team titles in a dumpster match. So I know that this dumpster was on the ramp. Do you guys know at that point, okay, we're going to WrestleMania in a dumpster match, or how does that come to be? When did it go from an angle to, okay, we're going to use it in the match as well?
When it got over the way that it did, and it was something unique, and instead of having a casket match, just have a dumpster match and try and reverse it with the heels going in this time. So take what they did and just repay that flavor here.
No doubt about it. The match was super fun. Meltzer gave it 3 1/4 stars. We're going to cover this entire show in long form this March. Mark your calendars. It'll be one of our best episodes. Everything regarding Shawn Michaels here is going to be gold, guys. In storyline, though, here, the Outlaws are claiming that they weren't put in the dumpster that was at ringside, so technically they didn't lose the match, and the belt should be returned to them, and that led to a rematch the following night on Raw. Before the match, they showed highlights of Terry Funk getting treated backstage from the previous night at Mania, and he had a massive bruise, which is basically from his back to his butt, and Road Dogg has said they went back to check on him after the match, and he didn't sell it at all. How tough is Terry Funk, Bruce?
Well, let me tell you the other side of that story. Terry had this massive bruise, as we showed on TV and showed him being tended to by the doctor. Terry refused medical treatment. And I mean, it was ugly. And his wife, Terry's wife, Vicky, who's been through everything with Terry, she's seen it all. She's done it all. And she knows when Terry really is okay and when he might just not be okay. So we were at the WrestleMania party, and we were in Boston and going back and forth. And Terry makes his way into the office. We always have like a production office type of thing at the hotel where everybody can go to. And I forget who it was, came and got me and said, "Hey, Vicky's looking for you. Can you come to the office?" And I came in, and Vicky says, "Terry's hurt and he won't go to the hospital. I'd appreciate it if you would please talk to him and do something." So I go and I sit down with Terry, and he's drinking vodka orange juice. And I said, "Hey, Terry, what's happening?" "Oh, Prichard, it's a nasty hematoma." And I'm like, "Okay, let's look at it." And it had gotten worse. And I mean, this thing looked like his kidney and everything inside of him had just burst. It was nasty and gross and so on and so forth. And I went in the party and I got the doctor, and I pulled the doctor in, and the doctor says, "Look, there's nothing more that I can do for you here. You have to go to the hospital." And Terry's like, "Oh, goddamn, Doc, I'll be fine tomorrow. We can just tape it up and I'll be fine. I'll see my doctor when I get home." He's like, "Terry, there's a lot of blood here, and it's internal. We need to see what's going on." And at this time, we had this really high-tech security team that was basically interviewing for a job, and we were using them for WrestleMania. These guys all had, their walkie-talkies in their wrists, and they're talking into their watches and talking into their suits and stuff, all wearing earpieces and like CIA agents and shit. And I said, could we get an ambulance here, sneak Terry into the ambulance, take him to the hospital in an ambulance, get him seen right away, and get him the hell out. And so they're like, no, we need an ambulance here. It needs to be discreet. We need to get Mr. Funk on the down low. We need to get him out of the building. No one needs to see. And they're doing all this stuff. So Terry just looks at me and says, Prichard, could you get me like 6 vodka with orange juice for the trip? I know those bastards are going to tell me I can't drink anymore tonight, and then by the time I get back, the goddamn bar may be closed. So against my better judgment, my wife actually went and got 6 vodka orange juice screwdrivers for Terry so that Terry could have, and he just told him it was orange juice, obviously, so that he could have his drinks on the way in the ambulance, and got looked at. And it all ended up Terry coming back and saying he was fine. To this day, we don't know what real damage was done to Terry Funk that night, because he just flat out refused to tell anybody that he was hurt. He no-sold it, completely no-sold it all night long, but he sure as hell, and he made it back in time. The bar was still open.
Huh. Well, that's what's most important, I guess. The next night on Raw, and man, this is the coming out party for DX. So remember, this is the night after WrestleMania 14, and this is maybe the night. Is this the night, Bruce, that the night after WrestleMania became a big deal? Of course, these days, the Raw after WrestleMania is a really big deal. But do you remember that being, WrestleMania 14, 1998, the first time it was a really big deal?
Well, it was a big deal because in this time frame, we really, you say the night after WrestleMania, we didn't have live Raws before this at this time. So yeah, it really was. It was the era of being live, and this is the first day of the next year type thing. So that's when our new year, that was our new year,
right,
began the day after. So that's pretty much when it started.
Well, here the New Age Outlaws would defeat Cactus and Chainsaw in a solid steel cage to regain the World Tag Team titles. And earlier in the night, Sean Waltman returned to the company. He was referred to as the Kid on commentary. Of course, most recently he had been in WCW, and he cut a hell of a promo on Eric Bischoff and Hulk Hogan. He was there as Six Pac. Here he's going to be back, and eventually he'll be called X-Pac. Triple H, X-Pac, and Chyna actually run out, and X-Pac hits Cactus with a chair as he's trying to climb out. And then they all come in the ring, and all 4 put the beat down on Funk and Cactus. And the Outlaws get the pin on Cactus after a spike pile driver. And then all 4 guys climb to the top rope of each corner as the DX music plays. And it's highly insinuated here that the New Age Outlaws have also officially joined DX. So with Shawn Michaels out, it's a new era of Degeneration X. Road Dogg has said that Shawn and Hunter took notice of how they were starting to get over, and had personally went to the Outlaws and asked them if they wanted to join. And he says that they played hard to get for a few minutes and then went back and said absolutely they would join. And James also said that he and Triple H had actually worked together in WCW all the way back in 93. This is back when Triple H was Terra Rising and James was Brian Armstrong. Of course, once upon a time, Bob Armstrong fired Shawn Michaels from Continental Wrestling very early in Shawn's career. And they've actually made a comment of such on Raw. I think sometime in the summer of 98, you actually hear Shawn make mention of that. How do you remember this association and the night after Raw? It feels a little bit like a changing of the guard with Shawn out. Triple H is no longer the lieutenant. He's now in charge. And, all of a sudden you've got a really new, even though it's got the same name, it's really a new faction completely with Shawn in and the New Age Outlaws there as well.
It was a new day, baby. It was a big void losing Shawn.
Sure.
So in order to replace him, the thinking is that we needed a faction, as we've talked about so much. And you had the tag team in the New Age Outlaws. You had the single in Triple H and Chyna. And then you had your utility guy with X-Pac. So here was an opportunity to elevate. It's elevating Triple H because Sean's out of the picture and putting these guys in a position where they're either going to make it or they're going to break it.
So what's coming up next, of course, is, a series of matches through March and April where they're all over the country. They do March 31st on Raw. You got the New Age Outlaws and Triple H taking on the Disciples of Apocalypse. But then it's Mayhem in Manchester. They're all through Germany. And they're working with the Legion of Doom. They're calling themselves LOD 2000 and being paired with Sonny here after WrestleMania 14. But we get something fun on the April 6th Raw. We see DX walking backstage and they come across the Disciples of Apocalypse motorcycles. So we see Billy, X-Pac, and Road Dogg piss on all three bikes. And you can hear the P sound, but there's sensors over the top. This has got to be a Vince Russo idea here. Is it not, Bruce?
No, it's a Vince McMahon idea.
Really?
And if you go back and you actually look at that, you will notice that the urine is true urine color.
Is this shoot urine?
No, it was imitation urine.
Working urine.
It was working urine. We got it from Urine Is Us, and but it was the right color, and I just remember Richie Posner. I love Richie Posner. Richie Posner was the Magic Man, the prop guy. He hates the word prop, but he was a Magic Man that did a lot of things. And I remember Richie coming to me and saying, I've got the urine, and I just want to make sure that it's the right temperature, and it's going to be on camera, so it should be the proper color. This will definitely read as urine, and then a little dehydrated, but it'll definitely read on camera as urine. And I'm just looking at him like, Richie, I don't think anybody's going to be able to notice the temperature of the urine. I don't know if that's important on television.
When you guys are sitting around the table, is Vince like demanding urine here? What might that sound like?
What if they whip it out and they piss on their bikes? God damn it, that's good shit. All I want to see is, and goddamn, take their time, draw it out like they got a huge unit, and then the urine flow. But I want to hear it. I want to hear it hit the goddamn motorcycle. Tinkle, 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 piss. God damn, I love it. Good shit. No, I don't want shit. Just piss. Make sure it's the right goddamn temperature too. People will know. They'll know the difference at home. God damn it.
It's a cold night. There needs to be steam off the urine. God damn,
don't be
give me
ridiculous,
more piss.
damn it.
It's absurd.
That's just where shit goes too far.
It's just ridiculous to me, but I do hope that somebody makes us a Tinkle Tinkle Piss shirt. Because
Tinkle piss.
I think Tinkle Tinkle Piss on like a baby's onesie, man, that'd be flying off the shelves. Everything we can buy.
Oh shit.
This sets up the New Age Outlaws and Triple H taking on the DOA in a 6-man tag.
They'll be made with tinkle piss. God damn it. Everybody's going to want to go. God damn, remember the time they went tinkle piss on the bikes? Good shit. Not shit. God damn it, don't order any more shit.
Triple H gets the win over Chains with a pedigree here, and then DX beats him up with chairs. So not only did they get their Tinkle bikes, but now they get beat up with chairs as well. The next week, Owen pins Billy, and later in the show, we see New Age Outlaws, Triple H, and Kane lose to Austin, The Undertaker, and LOD 2000 in about a minute and a half when Austin pinned Dogg after the stunner. Sort of interesting here. You guys have them win the tag titles. They just joined DX. They're finally in the main event, a big-time match on Raw, and they lose in a fucking minute and a half? It's Austin.
Yeah.
You can excuse it. All right, let's keep rolling. They're working with LOD 2000 through all the house show loops. And on Raw, they're teaming with Triple H against LOD 2000 and Owen Hart. As we cruise in to, here we go. Are you ready? April 27th, 1998. This is where we see Raw invade Nitro. DX, of course, goes over to the Norfolk Scope, and they're dressed in camo. They're driving a tank. I'm sure we're going to do more about this at some point in the future, but we've got to talk about it a little bit now because we've put this on the poll several times and it never wins. catch us up, man. What do you remember about the time DX invaded Nitro?
Well, first of all, it was something that we had talked about in a production meeting, and the question was posed: what would, back in the old days, if you had an outlaw promotion that was coming into your town, what did you do? If you were the underdog, and what did you do? I said, well, hell, man, they used to send the toughest guys in the territory, go sit in the front row and say hello, go knock on their door. And it just so happened we were going to be close to where Nitro was, and the opportunity arose, and Vince decided this was it. We're going to go down and say hello. I produced all of those invasion spots with those guys. And on this particular day, we went down, and it was, and Russo had worked a lot with these guys up until this point, and I had been given a directive from Vince McMahon exactly what I could do and what I couldn't do. But he also made it very clear to all those guys, it's like, Bruce has final say, and listen to what he says. And if he, pulls you back, you gotta listen to him. So we had, you just don't know when you go out and do this shit. You don't know what you're going to run into. There's so many variables, from somebody on the other side going too far, maybe one of your guys going too far. Legally, we were told that we couldn't go on the grounds. We definitely could not go inside the building. That was one thing our lawyers told us, do not do. Don't go inside the building under any circumstances. But a lot of different shit happened. The biggest thing to me that came out of this from a talent perspective was Triple H, Billy, Brian, X-Pac, and even Joni. Every one of those guys and girl were ready to fight. And when I say they were ready to fight, they were willing to do whatever it took to get over and to make noise and to make this thing work big time. Nobody was afraid of what would happen. I remember it was actually Brian James who saw that the downstairs, when we drove the tank down the ramp and they closed the door on us, it was Brian James that saw that door was open and said, hey, let's go down the ramp. Let's see if we can get in the building. I said, we can't get in the building, but we can go down the ramp because it's still technically a street, actually. But every one of those guys impressed me so much with how far they took everything without stepping over the line. And just the balls that they had. Because a lot of guys wouldn't, believe it or not, there's a lot of talent that wouldn't have done what they did. Oh, I got buddies here. I got this, that, and the other thing. Brian, this is great. We were talking about what do we do if the WCW guys come out to confront us? What do we do? And it's like, what happens if Ming is leading that charge? And I remember saying, if Ming is there, feed me to Ming, because I felt that Ming wouldn't eat me. Thought that, we had a friendship that went way back, that I didn't think that he would kill me. And Brian was like, I hope my brother's there. I'll kick his ass. We fought forever. I'll kick his ass. I hope he comes out. I just hope he comes out on principle. But it was Billy and Hunter and everybody, man. X-Pac, they were all like, come on, let's go. Nobody was afraid. Everybody wanted that confrontation. It was fight at this point, man, they were fighting for their company. They were fighting for their position, and they knew that this was their opportunity to stand out apart from everybody else. And they just impressed me so damn much on everything that we did, because they had the same attitude of, guys, we've got one shot at this. We got to make it great. And they did everything I asked them to do. And they did shit on their own that was tremendous. And I think that's the whole reason, because this was the pivot. This is where we kicked their ass in the ratings, and we never turned back.
No doubt about it. It was certainly one of the more memorable moments here. And you guys weren't done yet. You guys do a series of television tapings that, we can kind of skip over. On May 11th, you would invade the CNN Center and WCW headquarters. Of the three little visits, I guess, CNN Center and WCW headquarters, and then the actual live event in Virginia, which one's most memorable to you and which one was the least memorable?
God, they were all equally memorable because every one of them had their own different set of confrontations. And I still say that when we do DX and we do this invasion thing, man, there's so many great stories. But we had the cops called on us and we got surrounded at the very first one in Norfolk, and we had our own battles there. At the one in Smyrna is where they called 911 and they screamed that we were being attacked with weapons at the front door. And we had the entire Smyrna Police Department show up. At the one in CNN Center was just a great story of how I kept the crew there. And we requested to see Ted Turner and actually got all the Turner employees on camera doing the DX chops and things like that. There's a little sidebar. When we went to the office in Smyrna, Georgia, there's a sign on the grass and it says no trespassing and no solicitors. Well, Road Dogg jumps off the tank and runs up to the sign and says, "What exactly does this say here? I don't understand. Is this French? No trespassing." And we just kind of goofed on it, but we shot it.
Right.
So when the lawsuit came about, when WCW sued us and we were suing WCW, I was in a deposition and they asked me, they said, "Well, did you guys trespass?" I said, "No, not necessarily. We just went up and knocked on the door and we asked to see if Eric Bischoff or anybody was there." They said, "Well, it was clearly marked no trespassing and no solicitors." I said, "Well, we weren't trespassing and we weren't soliciting anything. We were just asking to see someone." I said, "So you didn't know that there was posted no trespassing?" So how would I know that? And the guy plays the tape for me of me telling Road Dogg, "All right, Jesse, come on, let's go. Enough, let's go." And yeah, videotape. It's a hell of a thing.
Videotape is a hell of a thing. That's awesome. Here's kind of a fun one. On May 19th, the Raw shotgun tapings, we would see the New Age Outlaws beat the new Midnight Express. Kind of a similar deal here where you've got two single stars and you're putting together a tag team. And this is sort of the tale of two ways this thing can go. On the one side, one of the most over acts in the company, the New Age Outlaws. On the other, the Midnight Express, or the new Midnight Express. How'd you compare and contrast the two here?
Well, one actually was new and the other was a retread. So regardless of the new members of the new Midnight Express, the idea was old and it had Corny as the manager, and, Corny wasn't invested in it. Corny felt that the new Midnight Express didn't have a chance in hell, but he was willing to go along with it and give it his best shot. But it just wasn't there's only one Midnight Express.
So on June 1st, that issue of the Observer would see the New Age Outlaws named as the tag team of the year. But I think somewhere in there, Meltzer was clear to make sure that everybody understood it was based on their charisma, not their work rate. Your response to that?
Over at BrucePrichard.com, you can get my response to that with a beautiful FDM shirt.
June 8th,
and I'll call you too.
The New Age Outlaws get a win over LOD 2000 and the DOA in a triple threat match. And this happens when Gunn pins Road Dogg. Process what I just said. This is awesome. The New Age Outlaws are working a triple threat tag match against LOD 2000 and DOA. And Gunn wins when he pins Road Dogg. It's a very creative finish. And the finish actually gives birth to what we now call the Outlaw Rule. It's a future for all future triple threat tag matches. The partners can't pin each other. And this was the loophole. Whose idea is this? Because this is really, really creative. And I guess the first time it had been done.
I think that was Vince Russo's idea.
It's amazing.
What would happen, bro? Because the argument was, well, if they can tag anybody, why can't they tag each other and basically the other one lay down? everybody, of course, all the old timers were all like, "Ah, that's a stupid idea. Why would they do that?" But it makes sense.
It makes total sense. And it's really some of the more creative writing. And I'm glad that we're giving Russo some props here, because not everything he did was awful. He gets a bad rap sometimes. Around this time is when we start to see the Road Dogg do his big introduction that you heard at the beginning of the show here. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages. And then, of course, he pitches it to Billy Gunn, who says, if you're not down with that, we've got 2 words for you. And this becomes so over for so long that it became something the crowd was really singing along with. And this sort of laid the groundwork for people to do this for a long time. Most recently, of course, we saw Enzo and Cass do this. Whose idea is this? Is this all Road Dogg? Does he put it together, try it, and it gets over? Or is there somebody sort of, feeding the fire behind the scenes?
No, it's Road Dogg's idea, and I don't think that anyone really ever anticipated it would get over to the extent that it would. But when you listen to the audience just kind of went with it, and they loved it. And it was a period where there were a lot of sing-songy things, The Rock Says, and, all of those things that the crowd was interested in and the crowd was getting into. They wanted to be a part of the show. It was their way of being a part of the show.
Audience participation here.
Right.
And it's an era when, the signs are exploding. Everybody wants to bring a sign to Raw, and, people really want to express themselves. Is this the most, you could argue about entrance music and all that, so I won't include that. Is this the most over ring introduction in history? It's got to be, right?
Oh, I thought it was. I thought it was great. And again, you take 2 guys that previous to being paired together and doing all this, that you got their personalities to come through, and together they played off of each other and had such chemistry together that it was off the chart.
All right, let's get to King of the Ring 1998. Of course, we're going to cover this for the 20-year anniversary this coming June. Mark your calendars. It goes down in Pittsburgh, and the New Age Outlaws earn 1.5 stars in the Observer as they best the new Midnight Express. This actually is an unannounced match and added at the very last minute. And considering how over the Outlaws were, it feels like a little bit of a waste. What's your thoughts here on adding them to the pay-per-view, but not announcing it?
No, what's a waste of not having them on the pay-per-view at all? Or, I just think it was last minute. They probably needed something for time. And it was also during a time of Vince Russo Crash TV, where they didn't always announce everything for television and or for pay-per-views. That as you tuned in, there were always some extra things that weren't announced. All we really promoted was the top few matches.
Kind of a fun moment here on Shotgun Saturday night, June 4th. Go out of your way and check this out, because I don't know how many times you'll see this. Terry Funk tagged with Dustin Rhodes to take on the New Age Outlaws. Talk about lots of different eras, lots of interesting stuff going on there. Around this time, the fans are actually starting to turn DX babyface, and this happens because they start to feud with the Nation, and it becomes very apparent, okay, we got to pick somebody. Well, these guys are the babyfaces. How much of a decision like that is based on reaction and based on merchandise? Because the company exists, obviously, to sell shit, whether it's pay-per-views or tickets or merchandise. But it feels like at this point, you could have slapped the DX logo on anything and people would have bought it, right?
Well, kind of about this time, but really after this, even more so, people were really getting into everything. They were cool. They were young. What was there not to like about DX?
Right.
They were young. They were tough. They were cool. They had the chick with them. So the audience was turning them right before our very eyes. No matter what you did and no matter how extreme they went, the audience was behind them.
I'm pretty fired up about this DX impersonation of the Nation. We've talked about it a lot here on the show. Every time we talk about it, you get criticized for not taking blackface to task a little more. Here's another shot for you to be outraged by that. But
I'm outraged.
That's a little better. Billy Gunn was the Godfather, and Road Dogg was D-Lo. And we've talked about this before. You think Road Dogg stole the show here, right?
I did, in his portrayal of D-Lo Brown with the head bob and repeating everything. I thought that he was the star of the whole thing.
July 13th, we see the New Age Outlaws finally drop the tag titles to Kane and Mankind. and they have a rematch later in the night for the titles on Raw, and that goes to a no contest. So here we see Kane and Mankind win the titles, and then they pretty much immediately lose them to Austin and The Undertaker, which we've covered on the archives. It's obviously done to try to heat up the feud between the two teams, but it sort of screws the Outlaws out of the title in the process and sort of pushes them to the side temporarily. At this point, do the Outlaws have any problem with this? I mean, they're so over, they clearly don't need the belts. They're baby faces. It feels like at this point, with or without belts, these guys are kind of made guys, right?
Absolutely not. They didn't need the championships. They were in a personal issue with the Nation of Domination. It wasn't about the championships. And the other issue with Kane, Mankind, and Austin and Taker, it kind of did need the championships in that whole thing to play out.
Fully Loaded, which we've covered in the archives, goes down on July 26th. The Outlaws aren't wrestling on the show. Kane and Mankind come out and do a promo in the ring, and the Outlaws come out and challenge them for a tag match the next night on Raw. Any recollection why such a hot act was not a part of the pay-per-view here at Fully Loaded?
What, the New Age Outlaws?
Yeah.
Again, it's just, you have so much to put on the pay-per-view and so many things to feature that sometimes it's good not to put a hot act on so that the audience is going to crave it a little bit more. You know, you don't have to have, it's John Cena right now, other than being really busy and not being able to be on everything. But it's good for your guys not to be on everything so you get tired of them.
Well, people are getting a break from Roman Reigns right now.
And that's, you know what? It's unintentional. And if Roman were healthy, they wouldn't be getting a break. But I think it's good for Roman Reigns.
No doubt about it. You know, you could argue that same thing about Seth when he went down with an injury. He came back super hot. Obviously, you could argue should he have been a face or baby face, but going back even to the Triple H quad injury, I feel like Triple H came back way more over than he was when he left. So a little time off doesn't hurt, but that was just a cop out for you saying, hey, we couldn't do our fucking jobs and write them into a meaningful angle.
Well, I wasn't writing the stuff at the time, so that's basically Vince Russo was the shits and couldn't do it. So there you go. Conrad Thompson, send your hate tweets over to at hey, it's Conrad. He said Vince Russo's the shits and couldn't do his job.
Look at you starting it up. So the Outlaws start to lose some matches on Raw, and it's probably not that big a deal at this point because they're so over like Rover. Arguably the second most popular act in the company at this time. Of course, Austin is white hot, but DX is right underneath that. On August 10th, we see Kane and Mankind defeat the Outlaws, The Rock and Owen Hart, and The Undertaker and Austin in a four-way to win the titles. So Kane and Mankind have the straps back. And let's get to August 17th. We see a street fight between the Nation and DX finally go down. Double J and Southern Justice attack X-Pac, and Jarrett actually cuts off some of X-Pac's hair. Southern Justice and Jarrett leave X-Pac and the Outlaws lying in the ring. And of course, that leaves Rock, D'Lo, and Henry to sort of put the boots to Triple H and leave him laying as well. And there's no winner. An interesting sort of hodgepodge of angles here. It's kind of getting confusing to even talk about because Jarrett and Southern Justice feel really out of place. Did Jeff have nude pictures of Vince Russo's mom, or how does that come to be here?
So
okay.
It was to get to the Jeff Jarrett haircut, which by God we cover in the entire Jeff Jarrett episode that's available in the archives. But it was simply to get X-Pac and those guys off into the hair match. It's a hair match.
August 24th, we see the New Age Outlaws finally get a win on Raw, beating Southern Justice, and that takes us to SummerSlam 98. I'm looking forward to us covering this one next year as well. It went down to Madison Square Garden, and we would see the Outlaws beat Mankind to win the titles. Of course, it's supposed to be Mankind and Kane, but they have some problems leading up to this match, so Mankind just goes it alone. It turns out Kane was hiding in the dumpster that was at ringside, and he hits Mankind with a sledgehammer. And this has kind of been criticized over the years. What did you think about this sledgehammer shot from Kane to Mankind here in the dumpster?
It was what it was. It's a theater of the mind. And frankly, I'm a firm believer sometimes in what you don't see can be better than what you actually do see. If you had seen it, it was a horrible shot. You can go, oh God, that was terrible. He barely touched him. If you don't see it, the theater of the mind leads you to believe, oh, did he take his head off? What happened? So I'm I'm a big proponent of that.
I love you for that.
What?
Well,
I am. I like the theater of the mind. I like sometimes you don't have to see everything, but because Dave Meltzer wants to grade everything with his star system in Japan, where Nakayama Hachimoto is.
Take a poop of your pants on. He did give it 1 star, but that's what I'm talking about. What I love about you is that you can't say the word theater.
Why can't I say theater? Theater. That's how you say the damn word. How do you say it?
Theater.
That's what I said. Theater.
Well,
theater of the mind.
Not only do I love that, but I love that you're defending that you can't see the action. And so it's almost like every time WWE misses a shot, I'm sure you're sitting at your house and somebody's like, oh man, I didn't even see him hit him. And you just turn to them and say, theater of the mind. You know, yes. He hit him. Just imagine it hurt real bad.
Okay. I'm going to give you an example. How about when Kane, gave the tombstone pile driver to the little feller this week on TV?
Right.
Finn Balor.
Oh my God.
If they had cut on that, it would have looked devastating as hell. But because you people want to see him hit it and it didn't look good. If they had cut and you didn't see it, you would think, oh my God, he just drove his head into the, it's just a different way of looking at things. Don't take everything so damn literal.
Send your hate tweets for that Finn Balor comment to @Bruce Prichard.
What did I say bad about Finn Balor?
First of all, you forgot his name, and then you referred to him as the little fellow. This is like doing a podcast for Ric Flair.
I said the feller. Because he's Irish and I'm Irish, so we're both Irish. We're basically brothers.
Look at you backpedaling.
We're basically brothers, me and all Finn.
Well,
I like Finn. My whole thing with Finn is I like the Beast so much more.
The Beast is Brock Lesnar. You mean the Demon?
What the hell's Finn Balor? The thing when he paints his face. He's the Beast.
He's the Demon.
The Demon. Okay. I like the Demon so much more.
God damn.
Open mouth, insert foot. I like it when he paints his face and he's that other guy. I love that.
Do you hear yourself? You sound like Jerry Jarrett right now.
Huh?
You have become what you hate the most.
When he does, and he got the thigh and they're on his face, and the little people clawing at him from over his shoulder. That's entertainment. That's good shit.
This is Billy Gunn's 6th time as a tag team champion, which at the time sets a record for the WWF. The next night, Henry and Rock would get a win over the Outlaws by DQ. And then, of course, they're all around the horn working with some interesting names, but my favorite is September 7th. The DX got a win over Kai and Tai, didn't they, Bruce?
Indeed.
That was freestyle right there, folks. We're good like that. September 21st, Billy Gunn has a big night, man. Early in the show, he pins Jeff Jarrett in a singles match. And then later in the show, McMahon schedules Austin and a volunteer to face Undertaker and Kane in the main event. So Gunn comes out and partners with Austin. It's a pretty big deal here. And it's sort of interesting because Austin and DX haven't really commingled much. They haven't been involved on screen all that often. And at this time, DX isn't really doing anything with Kane and the Undertaker. Why was this done? Did somebody see something in Billy Gunn and they just wanted to test the waters and sprinkle some Hulk dust or some Austin dust on Billy Gunn here?
Here's what I believe. They had a box and they picked a name out. That's truly what I believe. I don't think there was any rhyme or reason to it at all.
Well, why did you say they? Were you not there, motherfucker? Why don't you take ownership of something?
I wasn't a part of that at that time. That was Vince Russo.
Okay. This is fun, Tony.
So Conrad once again is burying Vince Russo in his writing.
And this is just like my Monday podcast. I don't remember shit with Tony Schiavone. So breakdown is September 27th.
No, I just told you there was no reason to it. There was absolutely no reason. I need somebody to be with Austin and Billy Gunn. There was no thought out, well, let's put Billy Gunn in because we really would like to see what he looks like outside of the New Age Outlaws. None of that discussion doesn't happen. I
don't know why I expected you to remember it. You couldn't remember fucking Finn Balor's name. The New Age Outlaws and X-Pac, goddamn, listen to you, defeated Jeff Jarrett and Southern Justice. It gets a star and 3/4 for Meltzer. This might be our last show. We've peaked. Judgment Day, Headbangers would get a win over the New Age Outlaws by DQ. Gets a star and 1/4 for Meltzer. November 3rd in Dallas, we see the New Age Outlaws get a win over the Hardy Boys. And this is actually their first match against each other. It's kind of interesting because at this time, I don't think anybody would have ever imagined that the Hardy Boys would go on to be what they became. I also should mention that the schedule here is as crazy as it was in the 80s. Let's take, for instance, November 7th and 8th. They did a day show on the 7th in Toronto where the Outlaws beat Mark Henry and D'Lo Brown. That night, they're working Buffalo, and they're working against the Disciples of Apocalypse. The next day, on November 8th, they're doing a day show in Montreal, and they get a win over Mark Henry and D'Lo Brown. Then they do a night show in Ottawa the same night, November 8th, and they get a win over the DOA. So back-to-back double shots. Any memories as to why that was done? That's not something I see a lot in my research here, back-to-back double shots.
Well, back in my day, we used to work quadruple shots every night. The business was really booming at the time, and business was picking up. There was just so much more of a demand. So we went back to what did work in the 80s, and we were concentrating a lot more on working kind of the Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday schedules. So the opportunity to get as much of that as we could, that Wednesday, Thursday, and Tuesday stuff, just it didn't draw that well. So double down. You're still working. Yeah, you're working twice in one day, but you're getting a little bit of time off during the week. Just an opportunity to capitalize as much as they could. Business was hot.
Well, let's talk about what's next here, because I think a lot of people have been looking forward to us covering it, and I'm sure we will at some point in the future. Survivor Series 1998 is something everybody's looking forward to. Maybe we'll get to it next November. The New Age Outlaws get a win here over Mark Henry and D'Lo Brown and the Headbangers, and it's a three-way match. They retain the titles, and Meltzer gives it 1 star, and here are his comments. They all tried, but these three-ways, while it was a nice marketing gimmick thanks to Paul Heyman, almost always stink due to a lack of focus. The match ended pretty well out of nowhere with Gunn pinning Mosh after a pile driver. I've always been curious about your take on this, Bruce. You're pretty old school. What do you think about these three ways, especially in a tag match? Is this something that you can really do a good job with, or is it a giant clusterfuck?
Well, that's the point I was going to make. A three-way match with 3 guys, I think, is a good concept. I think that when you add the tag team, you've got 3 guys standing on the apron, basically with their units in their hand.
Right.
So you've got an extra 3 guys out there. It's just tough. And then you get into why can't I just tag my partner and I'll pin myself? Just the rationale behind it doesn't always make sense with the tag team thing. So it's a great concept to do a 3-way match, but not a 3-way match with tag teams.
November 16th, we see the New Age Outlaws get a win over Kurgan and Golga when Shaggy 2 Dope from ICP comes off the top rope and hits Golga with a chair. So much to talk about here. I'd love to have just an hour to break this down. If you want to go watch this shit show, it's November 16th on Raw on the WWE Network. Chat me up about Kurgan. What's your favorite Kurgan match, Bruce?
God, all of them. The one where he knocked out Robert Downey Jr. in the movie Sherlock Holmes. That's pretty much it. Robert Malay, Kurgan, too nice to be in the wrestling business.
Really?
Great. I mean, geez, just the nicest guy that you would ever want to meet. And just very friendly and giving, and just a wonderful guy to sit and talk to. But just too nice for the wrestling business, in my opinion. He had a great look, and I always thought that he could have been a much bigger star, but he just had a plotting. He was a giant, but yet he wasn't anything more than that. He didn't have a lot of personality to go along with it. But a great guy.
I don't know when we'll talk about Kurgan again. What was up with the black tape on the end of his finger?
That helped with the claw. It gives strength to the fingers. Everybody knows that.
Golga, help me understand. Earthquake was over like a rover once upon a time. 7 or 8 years prior to this, he's main eventing against Hulk Hogan. Obviously, he's went on to not necessarily greater things in WCW, but he's back here. And you guys pitch him on fucking Golga. Chat me up on whose idea this was. I already know the answer, but I want to hear the story and what you thought of Golga.
Man, you don't even know. The original idea behind Golga was to be this deformed monster and kind of almost like a burlap sack outfit, pants that he was going to wear. And the mask was going to have a huge knot in it. Okay. So as you're looking at it, you're seeing this huge abnormal knot on the left side of his head. And you're thinking, oh my God. And you tell the story about how disfigured this guy is and what must be under that mask. So we knew Tenta could work, and he had run the gamut. He had been Earthquake, he'd been the natural disasters. He had been the Shark down in WCW. And Vince was looking for some way to hide so they didn't go, oh, that's the Shark from WCW, or that's Earthquake. He felt that he had already used up as much as he could get out of the Earthquake character and thought that John, with this Golga gimmick, would give him new life. Well, the mask didn't work out the way that we wanted it to. The damn bulge would move when he would work. Then somebody had a great, absolutely wonderful idea that I said, what if every time he came out, the bump was in a different spot on his head? And again, you got to be careful what you suggest sometimes. I love it. But it just didn't work. Nobody bought it because after a while he would sweat, and the bump was kind of like a foam deal, and it would flatten out as the match went on. So it just didn't work. So make him an oddity. And that was Vince Russo's idea to put Kurgan and Golga and all the oddities together.
Chat me up when you guys sit down a guy like Earthquake who had been really over for you before, and you pitch this fucking gimmick. What's his response? How does he take to this idea?
The original Golga idea he really liked because it was a way to kind of hide his identity and allow him to do a whole new character. Once, that really didn't get over, and then they started with the goofy Cartman stuff and the goofiness. I just think that's where it went downhill. I will stand by. I do think it could have worked if we could have created a monster out of it. It didn't. Did you guys and I'll take the blame for that one.
Send your hate tweets to at Bruce Prichard.
Don't hate me.
Did you have any sort of working relationship? Obviously at the time, 98, 99, maybe even 97. South Park is just on fire and are one of the hottest brands, especially for licensing and toys and silliness, and ratings are through the roof, and they're just crushing. And now you guys are too. So it feels like something you guys would have been able to work out, but are you just carrying the Cartman doll out there, or do you guys have some sort of working relationship, and are you guys participating in any sort of promotion that you provide South Park?
No, but we sure wish we would have. We tried to get our guys on South Park and try and do an episode, with WWE superstars on South Park. That never really came to fruition, but it was a way to capitalize on the popularity of the cartoon.
So they didn't want anything to do with you guys? South Park was too embarrassed to associate with wrestling?
No, we did the stuff with Isaac Hayes and Salty Balls and had him come perform. What a miserable prick he was too. But it was trying to, do something, and they had their own thing. So
do you remember what Golga's shirt had on it? I know it had Cartman, but do you remember what Cartman's shirt and the word below it said?
I don't, but you tell me what it is, and I'm going to tell you another sidebar on the whole Cartman t-shirt story.
Beefcake.
Well, yeah. You know why?
Because of Brutus the fucking Barber Beefcake.
No, because Beefcake's over, man.
Oh, God.
But Jim Cornette would always wear t-shirts to work when he would go work at Vince's house. And he always would have these, huh?
He still does. He came to your show wearing a t-shirt with his face on it, and then he showed his penis to the crowd.
Well, that's with his face on it, and he's selling those, and you can get those over at jimcornette.com. But he would wear like these Cartman things with these silly sayings on them, and Vince would always get tickled by the sayings that Cornette had on his shirt. And we're like, "What do you got on your shirt today?" God damn it, that's some funny stuff. They should do like a little cartoon and put that shit on TV. God damn, it's Cartman. I like it. You've given him a name.
Wait, you're not freestyling being funny. This is real.
No, I'm just a funny motherfucker, man.
Wait, help me understand. He didn't know what South Park was?
I think Vince, after he saw, he had to be shown what South Park was.
What do you think?
I don't get it. Who's Kenny?
And why
if they kill him, how can he be on TV?
Well, see, he's the Undertaker, Vince, and Paul Bear. Anyway, Chapman, what do you think? What can you tell us about Vince? I know we're sidebarring here. What's Vince watch on television? Because we know he doesn't watch sports, and he's not.
He does. He watches football.
Well, his favorite wrestlers, favorite football player is Wahoo McDaniel. So
isn't everybody's?
Just saying.
It's my favorite football player.
Okay, so let me pretend for a minute he watches football. He doesn't. What else does he watch? Is he sitting around watching Real Housewives of New Jersey? I mean, what are we talking about here?
No, but sometimes, like Linda would get into ER or something like that, and he would watch a little bit of that sometimes. People would show him things, and he would watch it from time. He loves movies, but he loves his Washington Redskins, and he does watch football.
What's his favorite movie back in the day? I mean, I know you don't know now, but once upon a time.
God, anything comedic, something about Mary. Jesus Christ. I don't know how many gags we stole from something about and her tits. They were saggy down here. That was the whole premise behind the Mae Young flashing. Was from something about Mary.
That's awesome. Well, I appreciate you sharing that with us because everybody wants as much insight on Vince as we can get. And I do find it interesting that you said ER because maybe that explains why there were so many hospital scenes on Raw, with the bedpan to the head and delivering a hand. And there's so much that happens at the medical center. Because I guess, I don't know, maybe is that the reason he won't say ER? Or are they at the emergency room because of the TV show?
No, that's not it at all. It's more sophisticated to say medical center, but,
wait, hang on. So you're saying the motherfuckers who are riding around in a Rolls Royce eating Grey Poupon, if they're in an accident, they call 911 and say, I need help to the nearest medical facility?
Of course.
Yeah, sure they do.
Doesn't everybody?
No, they say, take my ass to the hospital.
Oh, okay. But no, I'm sure he watches stuff but he'll hear from other people, hey, you should check this out. And he'll check it out.
That's awesome.
But the son of a bitch works all day and all night. He doesn't. Pat Patterson used to say, said, why don't you stop and smell the roses? I'll smell them when I'm dead. But he just works. That's what he loves.
Talk to me about ICP here. Shaggy 2 Dope coming off the top rope to hit Golga with a chair, allowing the New Age Outlaws to get the win. Insane Clown Posse in the WWE, that's a Vince Russo call?
100%.
What's your favorite memories of working with old Shaggy 2 Dope and Violent J?
When I knew it was the last time we were working with them.
Did they rub you the wrong way, or you just didn't think they belonged there?
I didn't think they belonged there. They were actually decent guys, and they are decent guys. They came in initially, and the thing was we wanted to make sure that they could deliver in the ring. So they had to come in and they had to work with my brother Tom and see what they could do, what they were capable of, because we didn't want them getting hurt on our watch. And more importantly, we didn't want them hurting any of our guys doing things, because we had seen some of the matches they had. They weren't good. They didn't appear to know what the hell they were doing. They had never been properly trained. So when the suggestion was made to bring them in, it was like, okay, but they're going to have to come in. They're going to have to go to the studio, go to the warehouse, and be trained properly, or at least see what they know before we can put them in the ring. And that's what they did. And when they first came in, they were like, oh yeah, man, I do this and I do this move. And it's like, show me how you lock up.
Right.
And it was that, but they did it. They came in, they took their bumps and they put the work in. So hats off to them. I just didn't think that, I didn't know who the hell they were and didn't think it fit.
Capital Carnage, December 6th, we see the Outlaws get a win over Mark Henry and D'Lo Brown. They retain the belts here and get 2 stars from Meltzer. Let's keep moving here. Rock Bottom is December 13th. We see the Outlaws get a win over Big Boss Man and Ken Shamrock. They get 3/4 of a star. Then the next night at the beginning of Raw, we see DX impersonate the Corporation. We see Road Dogg as Vince, Billy was Shane, and at one point, Vince asked Shane if he has poopies in his diaper. And then Dogg has 2 little people tied to his ass to mimic Patterson and Briscoe. And at one point he says, Mr. Briscoe, does my ass taste good? And then Gunn says, you're not a sphincter, Pop. This is a sphincter. And then he moons the crowd wearing a thong. Triple H is reprising his role here as the Croc. X-Pac is Shamrock, and Chyna is the Big Boss Man. What did you think of this impersonation? This is the second time we see DX do this, and this one was fun, but not nearly as memorable or talked about as the one against the Nation. Why wasn't it as popular? Why isn't it as memorable? What do you remember about the segment?
Well, the reason it wasn't as memorable and or as popular per se is because it was the second time they're doing it.
Right.
You're always going to remember the first time. And the first time it had shock value to it. It was the first time that we'd really done anything like that. I think that this one was just as, if not more entertaining because of the people that they were imitating. And I enjoyed, the little fellas on Billy's ass and all that. I thought it was very well done.
It's an interesting skit, nonetheless. December 14th, if you'd like to see it. Later in the show, Shamrock and Bossman actually beat New Age Outlaws to win the tag titles. This happens when Shawn Michaels, who was the commissioner at the time, hits Billy Gunn from behind with a pipe, and Shamrock puts him in the ankle lock. Gunn's knocked out, of course. The ref stops the match. A very interesting turn here, and obviously unexpected. Shamrock and Bossman were both in the Corporation at the time. What's the decision here? Why was this decision made to have Shawn appear like this? And then put the belts on Shamrock and Bossman?
Because Shawn was available and coming in and thinking about maybe bringing him back in to have a commentary role and try and do something with Shawn so that we get the star power of Shawn Michaels, but we couldn't use him in the ring. So let's reintroduce him here and see how it goes. And it was, putting our foot in the water, taking baby steps.
December 20th, the New Age Outlaws would defeat the DOA. And then on the 21st on Raw, Road Dogg would beat Bossman to win the Hardcore title. So another unexpected title change. Prior to this, I don't think Road Dogg had even wrestled a Hardcore match. And here, you guys are giving him the Hardcore title. And this maybe is you guys trying to test the waters as singles wrestlers as opposed to continuing the tag run. Why were you splitting them up here?
Well, we were trying to do them as singles, but it was also during a time where anything can happen. So no matter when you tuned in, you could have tag teams competing in singles competition, vice versa. And it was a must-see TV because what you saw last week isn't going to carry over to next week. There wasn't a lot of rhyme or reason to it. It was, let's throw this up against the wall and see what sticks.
Speaking of rhyme or reason, on December 28th on Raw, Val Venus would defeat the Road Dogg, who was the Hardcore champion. But he gets the win by DQ. Process that.
How do you do that with a hardcore match?
Interesting. December 4th, 1999. January 4th, which I'm sure we're going to cover at some point. A very memorable show. We see the Road Dogg get a win over Al Snow. And then we cruise on over to January 11th, where we see Owen Hart and Jeff Jarrett beat the Outlaws in a #1 contenders match for the tag titles. And they, of course, go on to win the titles from Shamrock and Bossman on January 25th. So now Owen and Jeff are the tag champs. Later in that Raw, the Outlaws compete in a corporate Royal Rumble where the winner is going to get to enter the Royal Rumble at number 30. Neither man would eliminate anyone, and Gunn would wind up being eliminated by Test, and Road Dogg was eliminated by Kane. Of course, the winner is Chyna. She becomes the first ever woman to win a Royal Rumble. I'm sure we'll talk about that on our Chyna episode at some point in the future. This gets us to the Royal Rumble, January 24th. It's the Pond in Anaheim. And surprisingly, the Outlaws are both in singles matches. In the opening match, Boss Man pins Road Dogg in about 12 minutes. And this gets 2 stars in the Observer. The very next match, we see Shamrock make Billy Gunn rather, tap out with the ankle lock in about 14 and a half minutes to retain the Intercontinental. And they only get 1.25 stars here. Both of the guys are also in the Royal Rumble match. Road Dogg comes in at 12. He eliminates Edge, Gangrel, and Al Snow, and then he's tossed out by Kane. Gunn comes in at 20, doesn't eliminate anybody, and is thrown out by Austin. So chat me up here, Bruce. You've got 2 sort of mid-card, lost in the shuffle performers. You make them tag champs. They get over like Rover as top guys, super merch movers. The crowd's singing along. They're very engaged. And now we want to try to separate them, which, doesn't make sense. Feels premature to me, but I'm armchair booking 20 years later. But he gets a win and wins a singles title his first night. Fast forward a little bit. One of the bigger pay-per-views is the Royal Rumble. They're both in singles here, so I guess mission accomplished. But they're both losing. How does this make sense?
Well, to me, it makes perfect sense, because if you have a hot tag team and you have something that is doing well, and it's time to break them up, they've run their course. And here you have a tag team, you have one item, okay, that's going to be split by 2 guys for your merchandise goes. Let's split those guys up. Now you have 2 items. Each guy participates in that. Hopefully that the individual is as good as the sum of the 2 together. And that wasn't happening, but they didn't want to give up on them right away and wanted to continue to see if they could stand on their own as singles competitors. And I tell you, the stuff with Billy and Shamrock during this time, they were 2 solid guys that beat the crap out of each other. And right. I remember just loving to watch Billy and Shamrock work, because they work snug. They beat the hell out of each other. And I thought that some of their stuff was great. So I do take exception to, well, they're not doing anything with them. Working with Shamrock, and at that time, Shamrock, part of the corporation, it was good stuff. And they were having good solid matches, but not all of them are winners.
Okay, we had to hit pause here. We got a text from someone we can't talk about. Cleveland during the day, January 30th, we see Owen and Jarrett get a win over X-Pac and Road Dogg. It's a guitar on a pole match. This is fun for me, but at this time, you can't blame house show booking on Vince Russo. Whose idea is it to put a fucking guitar on a pole?
You're ribbing, right?
I mean, is he really booking house shows too? You're letting him do that too? What are you doing? I'm not booking TV. I'm not booking house shows. What are you doing?
I was running developmental at this time and working in talent relations, and basically go for this, go for that. No, during this time I was doing a lot of I did work on TV and the production end of it, but I wasn't doing the creative with them day to day. JR was doing a lot of the booking, and a lot of it was with input from Russo. But JR would look at what the hell we're having on TV, and probably, since it was in the house show, send your hate tweets to JR.
All right, let's get to St. Valentine's Day Massacre. A lot going on here. Let's start with Billy Gunn going to a no contest with Tiger Ali Singh when Shamrock interferes like 40 seconds in. This happened on Heat. What can you tell us? Tell us about your favorite Tiger Ali Singh match, Bruce.
The one that he had Babu eat the booger. That's my favorite.
I can't wait until we get to talk about that. On the pay-per-view, we see Bob Holly beat Al Snow to go ahead and win the vacant hardcore title. And in storyline, the title was vacant because Road Dogg was out with an injury. In reality, according to the rumor and innuendo, Road Dogg was in rehab. We knew we were going to talk about it eventually. This feels like just as good of a time as any. When did the problems with Road Dogg start to appear? What can you tell us about his trials and tribulations during this time?
He was in a bad way. He being Road Dogg. Road Dogg was absolutely off the rails. He was doing pretty much any and every kind of drug that you could get your hands on. And it was also kind of at a period where, guys were doing things after the show and it's like cool, but Dogg was showing up in not good shape. So it was affecting his work and it was affecting, the business, so to speak. And I remember kind of in this point in time coming back where we checked into a hotel and we had sent Dogg home because he showed up, he was messed up. Okay. So we sent Dogg home.
Is this a house show or a TV show?
This was at a TV taping.
And so, when this happens,
it actually, you know what? It actually may have been here at this pay-per-view. And the reason I say that is because I remember all of us walking in and I was the one that had to tell Dogg, that he needed to go and that we need to get him help. When we walked in that night, Road Dogg was in the hotel lobby and Vince was like, I'm not going to talk to him. Bruce, talk to him. And I went and I grabbed Dogg and we went off and we talked and he just basically cried and confessed everything to me and just said he needed help. He was in a bad way, but I mean, he was off the deep end. He was freebasing. He was smoking everything, taking everything. And even that night, I remember he was just out of his mind. He was drunk. He was high. He was everything. And we were concerned and we just said, man, you got to get help. You got to go get help. And I think he had reached the point. I think his wife had also kind of reached the point where she didn't want him coming home.
The way you just told the story, it feels like it was sort of an all of a sudden thing, but really he had it under control for a long time. And then it got to a spot where his life wasn't manageable. Would that be fair to say?
Yes. And it was, when you say it kind of was an all of a sudden thing, it became an all of a sudden thing to where it was more prevalent in public. It's one thing, guys sometimes have a problem. They can hide it because you're not around them all the time. And if they're coming to work and they're doing their job and they don't appear to be messed up at the job, then you assume and you can put your blinders on and say, okay, man, everything's good here.
In the Ric Flair 30 for 30 that people are going to see on November 7th, there's a discussion in there about how, Rick did drink after his matches every night, but he never drank before. And so people sort of give that a pass in the wrestling business where if you're not drinking on the job and you're not drinking before work and you're still able to perform, then it's okay if you have 10 beers and 5 cocktails after every night.
Right. Same thing with drugs. I would say the same attitude was with drugs too. And as long as it wasn't, affecting your performance and it wasn't being done to where people are making a spectacle of themselves in public.
Let me ask you this, because a lot of people are going to hear what you just said and they're going to take great offense and they're going to think that Vince should do more. But I think there's two schools of thought there. So I'm going to get blasted for this too. There's the thought of, I don't need to be the morality police and I need to let people live their lives as long as they're not endangering others. And then there's the other side of, hey, I'm supposed to be taking care of everybody. And that means not just when they're at work, but when they're away from work too. Did Vince sort of come down on the, hey, I'm not the morality police. It's my job to give people, it's my responsibility to give people an opportunity and make sure that they don't hurt others. But outside of that, I'm kind of going to stay out of it. And kind of talk us through how Vince rationalizes, well, some drugs are okay as long as he's not fucked up at work.
Well, I think there's a partial truth to that, but there's also the truth to, if Vince knew that you had a problem, he's the first one that's going to help you. And he's the first one that's going to reach out. He didn't know. And Vince was insulated in a lot of respects. We were insulated with where we were because we weren't around the talent all the time, Conrad. Right. It's not like, you're with everybody 24 hours a day. So you can only base your judgment and your assessment on what you see and what people are going to share with you. And the boys and other people are going to try and hide that and try and protect guys as much as they possibly can. So when you do find out, yes, that there is a conscious effort to try and help the guys because you want people to be healthy. You don't want to get that phone call, man. You don't want to get, I dread those. And that's what I call it. I call it the phone call that, hey, so-and-so is not with us anymore. And it reached the point to where you don't know what's happening with guys when they go home. And how can you know unless somebody shares that with you? So once it's shared with you, you are taxed with that burden. And we were very much so. If we were told about it, then we did act on it and we did respond to it. Because once you have that information, then if you don't act on it, you are, yes, like you say, then you are responsible. But if you don't know, there's no way, that's not fair to say, well, you should have known. You can't be around everybody 24 hours a day. And when we did find out, we did suspect that there was something going on. We did get him help. And unfortunately, it was late in the process because we weren't aware of it until it became too late. And that's usually when you become aware of stuff like that.
Yeah, it's an unfortunate situation, but before, we go any further, we do need to remind everybody that this is very much a happy story. So it might not feel like it right now, but we have the benefit of knowing, hey, things are a lot better these days. Later in the show, we see Billy Gunn working as the ref in the Ken Shamrock Val Venus Intercontinental title match. And during the match, Shamrock slaps Gunn outside of the ring. So Gunn throws him in the ring, and Venus inside cradles him, and Gunn gives him the fast count for the 3. And of course, that leads to Shamrock and Gunn fighting, and then Gunn attacks Venus. So it gets a 1.25 stars. It's interesting to me because it feels like, as bad as you feel for Road Dogg, you kind of feel bad for Billy Gunn because there's no real backup plan. He's working without a net at this point, right?
Yeah, he is. And that's oftentimes, unfortunately, what happens with the guy on the other side. Same thing, your opponent, whoever the hell you're working with. In this case, it's a partner, but your opponent, if you're involved in a program and one guy screws up, you're sitting there and you got nothing. So it can affect a lot of people. And in this case, it did. It affected not only, people that Road Dogg was working with, it affects Billy too.
The next night on Raw, Venus would beat Gunn to retain the Intercontinental title when Ryan Shamrock took a bump and Gunn looked concerned. So Venus hit him with a German suplex for the pin in about 3 minutes. Road Dogg would make his return from rehab at the beginning of March. Did you have, obviously you have had lots of private time with him and other talent who's in a situation like this. What were your conversations like with him on his way in and then on his way out?
Well, as far as going in, it's kind of tough to rationalize with someone that's in that situation, and they get so far gone that they don't, until they see it. It's hard for them to accept your words, and it's hard for them to accept somebody telling them, hey, you need to go get help because I can kick this. I can do it on my own. And you have to get in there. And once they get in there and they really embrace the therapy and they embrace the rehab and they're willing to do the work really starts when you get out of rehab.
Right.
And, the conversations with Brian were, hey, we're here. We're all here. You're not doing this alone. So let us, help us help you. And if you feel yourself start to slip, then, come to us and let us know. He had a pretty good support system, really and truly on the road. It's with Triple H. Triple H didn't drink or do drugs or party like that. So he always would volunteer, hey, travel with us. You're not going to do that in front of us because we're not going to be doing it. You're not going to get the opportunity. So there was a support system for him after the fact, but he's got to go through it. And we had a lot of conversations about it, just saying, if you need help, you got to tell us.
Road Dogg would wind up taking Billy Gunn's place in some of the matches once he's back, because Gunn is out of action with some sort of lung issue. He had some fluid in his lungs and maybe a respiratory infection. But they do manage to tag a few times. And then eventually on March 15th, we see Road Dogg defeat Val Venus to win the Intercontinental title. And sort of another surprising title change. It feels like at the time, a lot of people assumed that Billy Gunn would be the guy to win the Intercontinental title, but that's not the way it goes down here. Road Dogg is actually the guy who gets the nod, and it comes just a couple of weeks after he's out of rehab. Did any of the boys see any issue with this? Or was Road Dogg one of the boys and everybody sort of accepted that he had earned this spot?
No, I think that there was a sentiment amongst some of the guys thinking that, you know, hey, the guy goes to rehab, the guy screws up, goes to rehab, and he comes back and he's rewarded with the championship. And I think that's a valid bitch, quite frankly, in that the guys that are sitting there busting their ass all the time, and Vince McMahon and Vince Russo looked at it as here was a guy, he's coming back, he's a star, and we're going to capitalize on that stardom. He's got his shit straight, and one of the best things that you can do when someone comes back from going to rehab and things like that is you do want to throw them right back in and see how much they can handle and help them through that. You do want to reward them. You want to try and help them out through a lot of that. But I do believe there was resentment there by some folks, without a doubt.
Who specifically? It's been a long time. Name some names.
You know, I want to say Val actually at the time was kind of like, really? The guy gets rewarded?
Right.
That, you know, because Val, this is funny. You look at Val Venus now, and Val Venus has a dispensary and
right.
Marijuana dispensary and is extolling the virtues of marijuana. But at the time, Val was, you know, this straight-laced guy and didn't party a whole lot. You know, he drank but he never got out of control and was pretty much a fairly straight-laced guy back in the day.
On the same Raw, Gunn would beat Hardcore Holly to win the Hardcore title. So it feels like they sort of switched spots. Obviously, Road Dogg had been the Hardcore champion, and Gunn, it felt like, was angling for that. But they're sort of doing the old switcheroo here. Who makes the call to sort of change course from the way it looked like you guys were headed?
That's a Vince Russo and Vince McMahon decision where they're just looking and it goes back to the whole philosophy at the time.
Anything can happen in the WWF.
So just when you think you're going in this direction, you think you got all the answers, we're going to change the questions on you.
March 22nd, this is kind of interesting. We get Intercontinental title versus Hardcore title, Billy Gunn versus Road Dogg. It goes to a no contest after about 3 minutes when Al Snow, Goldust, and Venus all attack them. And of course, the new Age Outlaws wind up teaming together to fend them off. Was the plan already in motion for them to split, and this was to sort of test how, you know, that might look? Or was this really just a way to sort of put them back together and remind people, hey, they may be doing their own thing, but they still got each other's back?
Definitely the latter. And it was, bro, let's put them out there and we'll have everybody involved and it'll work. Just to keep people off base, but to remind people of, you know, Billy and Road Dogg, because as a unit, they were much stronger.
March 28th is where we get WrestleMania 15th, and we've covered that in long form, but we'll remind you briefly here. In the opening match, Gunn loses the Hardcore title to Hardcore Holly in a triple threat match. Al Snow is the other participant. Holly winds up pinning Snow after about 7 minutes, and it gets a quarter star. Later in the show, Road Dogg would retain the IC in a four-way match that involved Shamrock, Goldust, and Val Venus. Dogg would get the pin on Goldust. In about 10 minutes, it gets a star and a half. So the guy who didn't really belong as the Intercontinental Champion maybe keeps it, and the guy who didn't belong as the Hardcore Champion loses it. It feels kind of interesting in hindsight because when we did this episode, that was the number one question. Why in the world were these guys, you know, flipped? At this point, it feels like the fans were ready for them to be teaming again. Why was there a flirtation here with constantly putting DX together and then apart? Is that just Vince Russo wanting to keep everything in a state of flux and you never know where the swerve is coming, or what's the thinking here?
Yes. You never know what the hell is going to happen, and anything can happen. There was, now he would probably argue that was the reason, and that was the plan, to not know. But I tend to believe that it was, let's just continue to mix shit up, and we can go week to week, and whatever sticks, if they buy it and they're behind it, then let's go that way. Which is not, and again, I'm not knocking it, because quite frankly, it's a philosophy that I did for many years as well. I like to listen to see what the hell they're buying.
Obviously, these guys made an appearance later in the show when Triple H would turn on X-Pac and joins the corporation. They run in and get beat up by Triple H and Test until Kane comes out. I know we'll do more shows on DX in the future, I'm sure. But at this point, was there a thought to trying to keep these three guys together, X-Pac and the New Age Outlaws, and keep DX going and maybe replace Triple H with someone else? Or what was the thinking at this point?
Well, the real thinking at this point was trying to get Road Dogg and Billy in singles. And they were moving, I want to say during this time was the whole thing with X-Pac and Kane. So build that relationship there. There was never really any consideration given to, hey, we'll make Kane part of DX. That, you know, the green Photoshop picture of Kane in lime green tights is a Photoshop, people. Was not something that we considered or something that we did. And it was, you know, essentially keep these guys associated with DX, keep DX alive, because it was a hot brand. But Triple H let him go over here and be heel. And I think that there was also some thought to, hopefully out of this, you're going to have opponents in Road Dogg and Billy for Hunter on the other side, if they could get there. But obviously they went a different direction.
The night after this WrestleMania on Raw, Goldust would beat Road Dogg to win the Intercontinental title, and The Rock would get a win over Billy Gunn. So it feels like stop and start for sure for DX. Billy Gunn losing back-to-back, his Intercontinental title, and then The Rock the next night. But Goldust had an opportunity to get the win at WrestleMania, but they save it for Raw the next night. What's the thinking here? Is the idea, you know, we're back in our battle with Nitro mode, and we want to have a title switch on Raw as opposed to the pay-per-view? Or why not just have him get a WrestleMania moment and have him win the belt at WrestleMania?
More people will see it on Raw.
Well, with that rationale.
But I'm sorry. Also, with that rationale, more people still going to see it on Raw. But also with that, the other part of that is have a happy babyface ending on WrestleMania.
Okay, there's a better answer. Thank you for that. I found it kind of interesting that Southwest Championship Wrestling on April 10th gets Goldust beating Dogg to retain the Intercontinental title, and they're the only WWF guys on the show. How does this come about? What was the deal you guys had with Southwest Championship Wrestling?
Just dude, it was a lot of times doing favors for people and being able to send them a match to help them out with a big card. That's it. And every once in a while, a favor is going to slip through and somebody's going to do it, whether it be a favor to JR, a favor to Vince, a favor to me, whatever it is.
In South Bend, they worked the show on April 22nd where Gunn was over draws, and then Dogg is actually teaming with Big Show against The Rock and Triple H. So that shows you, what people thought Dogg was capable of as far as his positioning on the card. It's kind of interesting that a year prior, maybe the company felt like Billy Gunn was that guy teaming with Austin, and here, working with Rock, Triple H, and Big Show, it's Dogg getting the nod. Madison Square Garden on April 24th. This is kind of a fun match. It's elimination with Owen and Jeff Jarrett, Edge, Gangrel, and Christian, and the New Age Outlaws. The very next day is Backlash. And here we would see the Outlaws get a win over Owen and Jarrett in 10.5 minutes. And the idea here is that somebody is going to get a title shot against the tag champs Kane and X-Pac at the very next SmackDown. The first SmackDown, in fact, on April 29th. The match got 2.5 stars. At the television tapings the next day in Hartford, Triple H got a win over Billy Gunn. And at this point, we see Billy Gunn debut new music and a new name. He's Mr. Ass. Are you guys sitting around a room and Russo or Vince find this fucking hilarious? How does this come to be?
Yeah, they did. You know, this is how crazy things can get sometimes, is that the guy with the charisma and the gift of gab, Road Dogg. Frankly, the better worker, Road Dogg. The guy with the better look, Billy Gunn. Chiseled body, good looking, matinee idol looks. And Vince was just determined, if he had the right gimmick and the right just story and everything, that by God, Billy could just pull it all together. And that was the thinking behind it. And they introduced him as Mr. Ass, the badass Billy Gunn, and he referred to himself as Mr. Ass. Let's change his name to just Mr. Ass. It was attitudinal. So that's what they did. And the old proverbial fart in church, in my opinion.
Well, I mean, what did you think of the gimmick? I mean, what's the consensus when this comes out? I mean, is this something that he's excited about, or does he realize this is fucking stupid? Or talk me through it.
He appeared excited. He being Billy appeared excited. I think that the feeling, I'll tell you, my feeling on it was hard to get behind a guy, and it was even hard kind of to hate the guy whose gimmick is that he's Mr. Ass. He's got a great ass, and he would shake his ass. I just would go back and laugh and try to think of, you always want to say, let me hear Vince McMahon in this. I would always think of Bill Watts in a booking meeting. Like, this guy's, his gimmicks is he's got a great ass. He's going to shake his ass at me. And he's going to use the fame asser. That's just stupid, silly shit. I'll tell you what I'll do to his ass. I'll kick his goddamn ass. What I'll do. And you try to think, when you're talking about that mainstream and the big thing up in the marquee, Mr. Ass isn't one of those things that I want to see on the fucking marquee. And Mr. Ass.
It's so amazing to me that we're talking about this, because in my head, Vince is in the back and he's like, God damn, pal, he's got a great ass.
Look at that ass. I love it when he squinch your cheeks, pal. Come on, make him shake. God damn it.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
It is amazing.
SmackDown on April 29th, of course, we see Kane and X-Pac defeat the New Age Outlaws to retain the tag titles. And here we would see Ass press X-Pac overhead.
It's Mr. Ass to you, pal. First name, Mr., last name, Ass.
But Kane shoved Dogg, who accidentally clipped Ass, and X-Pac fell on top
now
of
you're
the
just
pin.
being silly.
So the New Age Outlaws argue after the match. On Heat, a couple of days later, the Outlaws get a win over Mark Henry and D'Lo Brown by countout. But then, of course, we're treated to Dogg and Gunn arguing briefly, but then shaking hands, and Gunn attacks him. So Kane comes out and chokeslams Dogg. Later in these same Raw tapings, we would see Gunn pin X-Pac in about 5 minutes with the Fame Asser after he low-blowed him when X-Pac went for the Bronco Buster. So Road Dogg comes out and attacks Gunn, and Gunn ends up hitting both Dogg and X-Pac with a chair. Kane comes out for the save. So this feels like, I don't know, the end of an era for the New Age Outlaws. And it feels like something that these guys, having the great success they had and this huge run as DX, might not have been tickled about. What was their thinking here in splitting them up? I mean, it was sort of a happy accident that it got over as strong as it did. But now that they've had such great years financially, there's no chance they wanted to break up at this point, right?
But yeah, I think a little bit of both, quite frankly. I think that there were some feelings that they did want to go out on their own, and they wanted the opportunity to be singles because that way they get it all and they're not having to split it. As far as seeing the guys and how we saw them, I know that Road Dogg was always looked at is that utility guy and the one that could work with everybody. He could always cut the best promo. You could count on him to deliver in the ring with pretty much any opponent. Billy was damn good in the ring, but Billy, if you had him with some certain type of opponents, he didn't always have chemistry with anybody. In my opinion, I always felt that the Road Dogg could go out and kind of have that match with anybody. Billy had to have the right opponent in a singles match.
A lot of people try to compare tag teams whenever they split up and they go into singles to the Rockers, because one of those guys went on to be one of the greatest of all time, and the other was a phenomenal wrestler, but for whatever reason, it just never was the same. At this point, did you guys have in your head who the breakout single star was going to be? Because it seems like even in the booking, it's sort of been flip-flopped.
I think that Vince McMahon was kind of hoping that Billy Gunn would be that breakout star. I think everybody, for the most part, kind of, I don't want to say knew, but felt that Road Dogg was the guy that had everything. He had, he didn't have the look per se. He didn't have the bodybuilder, chiseled body and look, but he covered it all up. So it doesn't really matter, because he could work with anybody. He could have great matches with everybody, and he could talk his ass off.
Right.
So to answer your question, I don't know that that's a fair comparison here. I think they really felt that both guys had their upside going into the Marty Shawn deal. When they split up, they felt that both guys had upside there as well.
Oh no, I'm not saying that the company thought one was going to be one or the other. It's just like when Brett and the Anvil split, or
sure,
when Rick and Scott split. There's always, I think a lot of people felt like Hulk was going to be the guy who had a singles run in him, or
right.
Scott Steiner had it. Or
well, what do you think? Okay, which one do you think would be Shawn? Which one do you think would be Marty out of how it all shook out?
Well, based on the way it shook out, it feels like Road Dogg is the guy who did more. But at the time, I feel like a lot of wrestling fans would have assumed, based on size and physique, that Billy Gunn would have been the apple of Vince McMahon's eye.
I agree with you.
Going into May, we see Rock working with Billy Gunn a lot, and that's obviously a big deal.
Oil and water.
That's what I wanted to ask you. How did The Rock enjoy working with him? Why didn't they click more than they did?
Just two different styles, or too similar of styles. I don't know what it was, but it was, they didn't have chemistry together, and the matches, in my opinion, stunk. Rock did not enjoy it. And I think that Billy, was too concerned with the gimmick, and it's that funny, happy medium. Billy was concerned with the gimmick, Mr. Ass, and trying to make that work and get that over, versus going out and busting his ass in the ring and getting better. There was just too much emphasis on trying to get the gimmick over, I guess, if you will. And they just, God, it was painful to watch those matches. Didn't click, didn't work.
On Heat, the tag champs, the Acolytes, would get a win over X-Pac and Road Dogg. They're still teaming together a little bit here. The next day on Raw, we would see Kane and Billy go to a no contest when Kane's leg gets caught on the ropes and he's hung upside down. So Road Dogg is able to come out and attack Billy Gunn, and then D'Lo and Mark Henry attack Kane and X-Pac. This continues through Over the Edge on May 23rd. And of course, this is the night where Owen Hart has his accident. But in this match, we get Billy Gunn getting a win over Road Dogg. And they're on after the accident happens. Did you have an opportunity to talk to them at all about performing after such a thing happens? It feels like maybe the worst possible circumstance to have a match in.
Oh my God, without a doubt. But no, I never talked to them after the fact. That's a moment in time, and in a period in time, you really and truly try to forget, and to go back and rehash it, and to go over those things. I can tell you what they thought. They thought this is horrible, and they thought that just a horrible, terrible tragedy. And obviously when they went out, no one had any idea really at that point what the hell was going on. But hindsight makes it even worse, and just a terrible, terrible tragedy that they're put in an unenviable, horrible position.
No doubt about it. A week later, they're on Heat, and Gunn would get a win over Viscera to qualify for the King of the Ring. And the next night on Raw, Road Dogg and Big Boss Man would go to a double DQ. A week later on Heat, Dogg would beat the Godfather to qualify for the King of the Ring. And then the following week, we would see Road Dogg and Ken Shamrock team up to get a win over Billy Gunn and China, which kind of feels a little odd that you've got that much star power on Heat, but it's a different time, and what a weird pairing it is. A lot going on here in this time in the World Wrestling Federation. On June 21st, we've got the Acolytes teaming up with Billy Gunn to beat X-Pac, Kane, and the Road Dogg. The Acolytes tag titles are actually on the line, so when Gunn scores the pin, he takes off with one of the belts. And then, of course, Gunn would win the King of the Ring tournament by defeating Shamrock, Kane, and X-Pac in the finals. Road Dogg was also in the tournament. He beat China, but then lost to X-Pac. So I guess my freestyle that maybe Vince McMahon thought Billy Gunn was the guy is right, because he's winning the King of the Ring here. And this is obviously the same King of the Ring that made Triple H and made Stone Cold Steve Austin. But now, Billy Gunn's the guy. Chat me up.
Imagine what he's going to look like with that purple cape and crown. God, it'll look magnificent.
Yeah, that was the anointment. Hopefully he'll be able to blast off from being King of the Ring, and he'll have something to tout. And this will be the launching pad for him.
Let me just freestyle this for a minute. I've always wondered this, and of course, only I would think about shit like this.
God.
Road Dogg beats China, who was once, in DX, and then loses to X-Pac. So it's X-Pac and Billy Gunn in the finals. I get the pairing of wanting Road Dogg to face China. I get that. I get Road Dogg having to face X-Pac. But why wouldn't Road Dogg Billy Gunn be the finals, where where this is who's going to be the singles breakout star? Who's it going to be, Road Dogg or Billy Gunn? Did you think at that point you needed to save that for a SummerSlam, or what's the thinking here?
Well, sure, make them pay for that.
Well, the King of
this is a tournament. You're gonna anoint Billy Gunn here, and don't confuse it anymore with him with his former partner. It's bad enough you're confused with X-Pac in there, but yeah, you can save that. Save that one for when hopefully it would matter. I don't think we ever did, but to me that's what would make sense. I would not have done it at King of the Ring.
The next night on Raw, Billy Gunn does an interview, and he comes out wearing the tag title belt, and he claims to be the champion and brags about winning the King of the Ring. Triple H and China come out and say that X-Pac and Road Dogg are claiming all rights to DX. Triple H tells Gunn and China to win their rights back to DX so they can get the money. So on July 12th, we see The Rock, Road Dogg, and X-Pac beat Triple H, China, and Billy Gunn. And then at Fully Loaded on July 25th, the Road Dogg teams with X-Pac to defeat Billy Gunn and China when Dogg pins Gunn after a pump handle slam. 2.25 stars. What do you remember about this all X-Pac or all DX match here at Fully Loaded?
Clusterfuck.
Yeah, I feel the same.
Pretty much. It just was, there were so many different stories and so many different issues and angles and everything to take care of. And I'm more of a simplistic man. Give me something I can understand and I can sink my teeth into. And this just was all over the place.
Let's talk about something that happened in August. On the August 23rd edition of The Observer, it was reported that Austin was scheduled to wrestle Billy Gunn in a non-title match at the July 26th Raw in Cleveland. So Dave's writing about this about a month later. Austin shows up the night after his First Blood match with The Undertaker. He's banged up, and he's at TV, and he's told he's going to be facing Billy Gunn. Now, Billy Gunn is supposed to be getting prepped to work with The Rock, not himself, and Austin has an issue with this and doesn't think he should have to face Billy Gunn in a match that's cold, especially fresh off of this match with The Undertaker. No one gives him a good enough storyline reason, so instead, he thinks the better use of himself is to just cut a promo and do that type of angle, noting that he was tired and beaten up from the previous performance. And allegedly, he didn't rule out working with Gunn if there was a storyline reason. And Meltzer writes there are tentative plans at some point before the year is out to have Austin work a pay-per-view match against Billy Gunn. So I find it interesting that Austin's just not even wanting to work the match here. this isn't something that we hear a lot about. What do you remember about this particular incident?
I actually remember this incident, and Steve was right. There was no rhyme or reason to have it. And especially coming off of the night before, he and Undertaker beat the living hell out of each other. And it was something that used to just bug the crap out of me. We would have these killer pay-per-view matches, and then the next day on Monday Night Raw, it's like, well, nothing ever happened. Let's go work a match. So with all that in mind, it just, I agree 100% with Steve's stance. And Steve was, give me a story. Okay. The story at the time it was all about Rock and Billy Gunn, and there was no story with Steve, and Steve was beat up, but more so to that, just logic and thinking about the night before to sell that match from the night before, in my opinion, storyline wise, is more important than having him work a match just to work a match against somebody. And that's what it was.
Through July and August, at all the house shows, Road Dogg is getting a win over Billy Gunn in a dog collar match. Whose idea was it to put these guys in a dog collar, and how did they enjoy working it? They worked it everywhere. I mean, Huntington, Baltimore, Providence, East Rutherford, Washington, Pittsburgh, St. Louis, Peoria, Bakersfield, Toronto. The dog collar match is over like Rover with these two. Why was it such a good fit? And why did it happen so often? Did they enjoy it? Chat me up.
Well, they did, and it was an attraction to be able to do the dog collar match, and that was something. I believe JR and I both suggested it because of Road Dogg and the dog collar, and coming from the Junkyard Dog in Mid-South and the different dog collar matches over the year. But it made sense for them, and it was a way to be able to blow off a lot of those matches, have a big match in the house shows, different than TV.
I figure we should mention this. Gunn is getting a push here for a big match at SummerSlam 99 against The Rock. To add to the match, on August 16th, Gunn has a segment where he complains about having a rash on his ass, but he's promising to make Rock's face look much worse than that at SummerSlam. So The Rock comes out and introduces the woman who massaged Gunn's ass earlier with poison ivy. So Billy Gunn uses a kendo stick on The Rock and winds up rubbing The Rock's face on his ass. Whose idea was this, and why was it yours?
Not it. Who else likes to have people kiss their ass on TV? Likes to see asses?
Ah, damn it, pal. And he's got poison ivy, and it's red, and it's blistered, and oozing pus. We need more pus out of the ass.
This takes us to SummerSlam 99. Road Dogg's not on the show, and in a Kiss My Ass match, The Rock pins Mr. Ass in about 10 minutes. It gets 2 3/4 stars. And The Rock makes an interesting comment the next night that maybe buried Mr. Ass. He's doing commentary during a match with Triple H and Mankind for the world title, and this is where Triple H is going to win his very first world title. And during the match, Rock says something like, The Rock versus Billy Gunn. Who booked this crap? The next week, you guys have The Rock laying the smackdown on the Brooklyn Brawler. Can you chat me up about The Rock saying, who booked this crap? The Rock versus Billy Gunn?
Oh, that would be The Rock who did that pretty much all on his own. And he's right. He can thank Vince McMahon for that, but they just, man, that match at SummerSlam, it sucked.
Not good.
So no, I mean, it sucked. And it sucked all the wind out of the people. And it was just, Rock was so frustrated because he really wanted it to work, and he's a damn perfectionist. And to go out there and have that kind of a reaction and/or non-reaction, he was just frustrated.
So, of course, the fans have for years thought that maybe this comment and The Rock sort of going into business for himself on commentary could have been, what sort of torpedoed Billy Gunn's singles run. But what you're saying is it really happened the night before. Did Vince know at SummerSlam when this match is not living up to expectations? Clearly, he's not blaming The Rock. Is Billy Gunn getting pointed with the ugly stick here?
Yes.
What's Vince saying on commentary? I assume are you doing Gorilla at this point, or are you not doing that either? You haven't done anything else on this whole show so far.
Yeah, I was doing Gorilla.
Okay, so if you're in Gorilla with Vince when the match is a stinker, what's Vince's reaction?
this sucks. It just that it sucked. And we were expecting so much more. You're expecting two great athletes, and you were expecting Rock to elevate Billy and Billy to come up. And unfortunately, neither one happened. And the harder that they tried, the worse it got. And it just didn't work. I mean, it's just chalk it up to no chemistry and a flop. It was a flop.
So chat me up. At this point, does Vince sort of want to pull the plug on this Billy Gunn experiment as a top guy as a single? Because you just made him king of the ring, you positioned him with The Rock, and it feels like a miss. Is Vince ready to pull the plug that quickly?
Not outwardly, but he definitely talked to Billy about, see, here's the other thing. You talk about, you touched on it earlier, and Billy Gunn with his breathing issues. What we discovered in all of this as well, and I'm not making excuses for Billy, but it's a fact. Billy had, I don't know if his asthma issues, but the reason that Billy did so damn good in tag team matches is because he wasn't going out there and working a full match as a single by himself. And that was also something that we discovered as we went on, that, man, he doesn't have the wind.
Right.
And it's not that he wasn't in great shape, but it was his lungs, and he had a condition that, he had what the hell, what they called the inhaler that we kept at Gorilla Form and things like that. It just, as a singles, he couldn't go.
Oh man. Are we burying Mr. Gunn here?
No, you know what? Because it is what it is. And unfortunately during this time and putting everything behind him and the high hopes that we had, it's unfortunate. And you discover things like that when you do that. You discovered, okay, hey man, Billy doesn't have the lungs for this.
Well, I guess the question is, does Vince sit him down? Does JR sit him down? I mean, do they have a conversation and say, listen, you have the right look, you have the right overall package, but you got to work on your wind if you're going to be in this spot. Like, we need you to get in better ring shape. So let's work on the cardio and we'll revisit this. Or does he even get that? Is it just...
Absolutely. No. Yes, he does. Absolutely. Both Vince and JR having that conversation with him and telling him that, hey, you've got this opportunity. And unfortunately, you got to change something, and we got to figure out what it is. And if it's an issue that is going to prevent you from going out and working long singles matches, that's something we need to know, and we can work around that. Do we need to go back to a tag team? Do we need to do something different?
I've had various friends in the company who work for the company at various times, and they say they don't get feedback like that. That sometimes they just show up and it feels like everything's different. They were flown in, but now they feel unwelcome, like they weren't invited to their family reunion of some sort. And they don't get a feedback after a match like that, where they're told, hey man, that was a miss and here's why. And we still believe in you and we're glad to have you on the team. But if you want to get to that next level, you need to do X, Y, Z. Are you saying that was a common conversation that happened back then? Or when did it become commonplace that it not happen and people are just left to guess?
Well, I can definitely tell you when I was there that I had those conversations. I can tell you that Jim Ross always had those conversations, and that Vince had those conversations with guys. Because again, it's not fair to the talent if they don't have those conversations and they're not being told. And sometimes, frankly, it is, you know what? And I know everybody, hey, well, creative has nothing for you. Sometimes you reach a point and you hit a wall where, man, I don't have anything else for you. And that's when you get, I got an idea, give me the belt.
Right.
And that's not a knock on Bob or anybody else. It's just, you reach a point and there's just nothing there, but you always do. Yes. When I was there, we always had those conversations with guys.
Let me ask you this. Do you think there was any sort of heat between The Rock and Billy Gunn? Because sometimes when a match is bad like that, and you've got a top guy who's well established, and you've got another guy who's kind of on the rise, and the match doesn't click, it would be easy for some people to jump to the conclusion that, oh, he's sandbagging him. And then the next night, given Billy Gunn versus The Rock, who booked this crap, it feels like The Rock is sort of publicly saying, this guy's not in my league. And given that the match was bad, does that sort of blur the lines of reality? And is it something that Gunn would have had a problem with?
Okay, well, yeah, it definitely blurs the lines of reality, but it's also Rock's persona, and that's something that Rock would say in character. So you can argue that both ways. I think that Billy felt that Rock probably could have given him more, and rather than look in the mirror, can go blame the Rock. Who's prospered on other things, and that's what you have to really look at. Billy, to me, is one of those guys that is an incredible tag team wrestler, and he's a great talent and a great wrestler. I just think that it was tough on the singles route for him.
I know you're curious. What does Billy Gunn do after SummerSlam? Well, he's working in a number one contender match for the Intercontinental title on SmackDown, which is a good spot to be. Goes down on September 2nd. He's working against China. Trouble is he loses in 2 minutes and 36 seconds. That's quite the fall, man, from working a pay-per-view against The Rock and a kiss my ass match to now we're losing to China for an IC title shot in 2.5 minutes. A few days later on Raw, he's working up the card again, this time for a world title shot against Triple H. Surprise, surprise, Triple H wins. Is there a bigger fall to go from working with The Rock at SummerSlam to losing to China a few days later?
Yeah, he could have lost to the Brooklyn Brawler.
I guess he could have. I don't know. I think I'd still rather lose to the Brooklyn Brawler. Maybe that's me. On September 21st on SmackDown, the New Age Outlaws make a surprise return, and they defeat the Rock and Sock Connection to win the tag team titles. And I'm curious, is this just you guys throwing a Hail Mary and realizing, okay, the singles run didn't work. We know this act is over. Let's give it another go. How does that come to be?
Go long.
Yeah.
Pretty much. Yeah. It's floundering, man. It's not working. And you've got two great talents that were great together. Kind of like Reese's peanut butter cups. Well, I like chocolate and I like peanut butter, and they're both better together.
I'm not mad at that. A few days after this, at the Unforgiven 99 pay-per-view, we see the Outlaws defeat Edge and Christian to retain their newly won belts in about 11 minutes. It gets 2.25 stars. And then on the 27th, we go to a no contest with Kane and X-Pac when the Hollies interfere in about 2.5 minutes. On September 30th, Chris Jericho gets a win over Road Dogg by DQ. And this is right after Jericho has joined the WWF. It's been written about and talked about quite a bit that Jericho has a big debut, and then it's not exactly what everybody was hoping for. What was the feeling in booking him with Road Dogg here, just to see how he could get over with another guy who was at that level?
Absolutely. And be able to give him a push and put him in there with somebody that is over and have him work and put him, if you put somebody in, there's a philosophy in the business, and this goes back to Vince's dad. If you book somebody as a top guy and you bring him in on top, then people are going to take him as a top guy.
Absolutely. Makes total sense to me. The Rock and Mankind get their win back against the New Age Outlaws and win the tag team titles on October 14th. What's the thinking here? It feels like we're sort of playing hot potato with the tag belts at this point. Was it just to try to get some eyeballs on SmackDown, or chat me up on the back and forth with Rock and Mankind and the New Age Outlaws here?
Unfortunately, it was during a time of hot potato with all the championships, and to be able to go back and continue that Rock and Sock connection, and just it was hot potato time, man. It was let's who's going to be champion this week.
It's super interesting to me to see, Billy Gunn as a single. He's on SmackDown losing to China in 2 minutes. But Billy Gunn on October 25th, well, he's tagging with his old partner, the Road Dogg, to reform the New Age Outlaws against Stone Cold Steve Austin and The Rock. And of course, they're main eventing Raw. What a tale of two runs, man. In a single versus in a tag. Bottom of the card, losing the ladies. On top, beating The Rock and Steve Austin. They get the win here when Triple H comes down and pulls Austin out. X-Pac comes in and kicks The Rock, and Gunn pins him. So DX is reunited here. What was the thinking here? It feels like it's sort of start and stop with, are they together? Are they apart? Obviously, the crowd is ready for this big reunion, and we would see this throughout the history of wrestling. People always want these factions to get back together. We just saw it with the Shield. What's the thought here in putting DX back together?
Nostalgia and frankly, everything and anything can happen any given night. So the let's DX worked. Hey, let's put them back together and see if that sticks. The singles experiment didn't work. Let's try what worked before.
Gunn would have a match with Austin that we talked about on the November 1st Raw. Of course, Austin would get a win here. And then a few days later on SmackDown, we would see DX defeat Shane McMahon, Kane, The Rock, and Austin in an elimination match. And on November 8th, the Outlaws would defeat Al Snow and Mankind to win the tag team titles. Snow and Mankind had just won these titles on the previous SmackDown. So lots of little quick runs here with Mankind. But New Age Outlaws, once again, tag team champs. And when they come to the ring here, Dogg actually has Al Snow's action figure in front of his tights. And during him talking on his way to the ring, he said how they were taken off the shelves because people were accusing Snow of beating women and severing the heads. Any memories of that whole ordeal? It seems kind of silly in hindsight, but that action figure did get a little bit of heat because he had the head with him. Chat us up about what you remember about this silliness.
I think that kind of just says it right there. It was absolutely silly. And it was the abused women, which, very serious. And when you look at abused women and you look at an action figure,
well, it was a character. It was a mannequin head. Like it was, nobody ever said it was a real person. It's like
it's an action figure of a guy with a mannequin head, not a zombie,
right?
With an actual woman's head. It was a doll with a doll head.
It just feels very jump to conclusions.
I just thought it was positively. It's just where you have people that are going to find something to bitch about and something to pick apart, just to pick it apart and bitch about it.
November 11th on SmackDown, Shane is teaming with Test and Kane and The Rock to defeat DX in an elimination match. And of course, we're doing these elimination matches to get to Survivor Series on the 14th of November. The tag champs will be the Outlaws, and they get a win over Al Snow and Mankind to retain. And then, believe it or not, we're working singles again right after that on Raw. Road Dogg gets a win over the hardcore champion Al Snow, but it's non-title. And then Test defeats Billy Gunn in a singles match. A few days later on SmackDown, the Outlaws get a win over the Hardy Boys. And then a couple of weeks after that, they work again in a steel cage match. And again, the Outlaws get a win. Let's fast forward to the November 29th Raw. The Outlaws and X-Pac defeat Kane, Mankind, and The Rock. So it's so interesting to see this stop and start booking. When these guys are a tag team, they're main eventing against Kane and Mankind and The Rock. When they're in singles, well, they're working with Al Snow and Test. It's just fascinating to me.
What's wrong with Al Snow and Test?
Nothing, but we're comparing them to The Rock. Come on. Armageddon goes down on December 12th. We see The Rock and Sock Connection defeat the tag champs, the New Age Outlaws, but it's by DQ. And this is kind of a fun one if you'd like to go check this out on your Google machine. Or actually, it's on the network. December 16th on SmackDown, the Outlaws take on Gerald Briscoe and Pat Patterson. Talk me through this match, Bruce.
Okay. Yeah, the first Intercontinental Champion who won the belt in Rio de Janeiro, Pat Patterson, and the greatest shooter of all time against both former Intercontinental Champions, actually at this time, Billy and Road Dogg, and Road Dogg not being a great shooter or anything like that. So it makes perfect sense to me. Jerry and Pat during this time as the Stooges were one of the most over attractions in the entire company. And they were, good God, in their 50s.
Right.
So, jeez, come on, man. They were excellent. I was thoroughly entertained because Pat and Jerry embraced the Stooge gimmick and went out and did everything they were asked to do and played it to the hilt.
On January 3rd, The Rock would defeat the New Age Outlaws and X-Pac in a 3-on-1 handicap match. Talk me through that.
Well, there's the New Age Outlaws, that's Billy and Road Dogg and X-Pac, and they got beat by The Rock. Hey man, Rock was a thing. It's just a story at the time and making things unpredictable so that people are sitting there going, what the hell is going on? And you can't call it because you would think logically you're sitting there going, well, there's 3 guys against 1. They should beat them. So you flip the tables on them and go, no, you know what? The Rock beats them and he outsmarts them.
It's crazy. On January 10th, a week later, we get Road Dogg defeating Billy Gunn. What the fuck?
Dude, there again, no rhyme or reason. It was just, you could put anything on at this point, and they're tuning in to see Raw and the WWE logo or WWF logo at the time. So it was all over the place.
Just after 3 guys couldn't beat The Rock, a week later on Raw, the 17th, 2000 in January, the Outlaws defeat The Rock and Big Show in the main event.
That's because The Rock was handicapped by the Big Show.
I love you for that. Royal Rumble goes down on January 23rd. The Outlaws beat the Acolytes at about 2.5 minutes to retain. Then they're both in the Rumble match. Road Dogg in at 19, and he throws out the Bulldog, and then he and Gunn actually eliminate Bradshaw together. Gunn comes down to 25th, and he winds up eliminating the Road Dogg. The match, of course, was won by The Rock, and why wouldn't he? He can beat 3 guys up by himself.
He beat 30 guys up. Well, 29.
Yeah, he did. This is kind of a fun match. February 3rd on SmackDown, we see Eddie and Saturn's debut match. Unfortunately, Eddie broke his arm during this match while doing a frog splash, and we talked about that all the way back in one of our very first shows on the Radicals. You see the New Age Outlaws here get a pin win over Perry Saturn and Eddie Guerrero. So you're debuting the Radicals. This is typical WWF. They're from WCW. Let's beat them the fucking first night, right?
Yeah. How much will come the odds? How the hell are they going to get back? Because everybody knows. But again, see, you're sitting there and you're going, oh, well, why don't you do the predictable thing? You do the predictable thing. You say, oh, boy, that was predictable.
Cool. I like when you get fired up. Thanks for that. February 10th, we see the Rock team with Cactus Jack, and they get a win over the New Age Outlaws, but it's non-title, and they're working singles the next week. Road Dogg gets a win over Grandmaster Sexay. And then that SmackDown, once again, The Rock is taking on the Outlaws in a handicap match. And he wins, but by DQ. So he's not the tag team champions all by himself, which may have been funny, I guess. On Raw, we got something that we would learn to love. On Raw, we get 3 of the greats, man. It's Edge and Christian taking on the Hardy Boys, the New Age Outlaws, and the Dudley Boys. Edge and Christian and the Hardys get the win here. And then we're working singles again, and Billy Gunn gets a win over Bubba Ray Dudley by DQ, and that sets up the pay-per-view that Sunday. It's No Way Out, February 27th, and here we see the crowning of the Dudley Boys as they finally become the World Tag Team Champions, getting a win over the New Age Outlaws in a match that got 2.5 stars. Meltzer would write that Billy was hampered by a shoulder injury during the match. He wound up having a torn rotator cuff, and this put him out of action until October of 2000. So he missed about 8 months. Was this the plan all along for them to put over the Dudleys here, or is this sort of rushed because of the injury?
No, it was the idea to put the Dudley Boys over here and just, begin their run. But obviously we were hoping to have a run with New Age Outlaws and the Dudley Boys.
Chat me up about the injury. Would you remember when it comes down or how it changes the plans, for what you guys had, or just freestyle some stuff?
Well, the plans obviously were to do something with the Dudleys and continue to get them over and have them work in a program with the New Age Outlaws kind of back and forth. And Billy getting out just put a big damper on those plans. And at first weren't really sure how long he was going to be out. And unfortunately, getting the news, he was out for a long damn time, and now you're back to the drawing board.
Yeah, it feels like sort of the end here for their run. Now, of course, we know they would make a big return later down the road, but The way they explain the injury in storyline is they attack him in the dressing room and then kick him out of the group for losing his temper too often. And this explains his long absence. For the rest of the year, Road Dogg is mostly competing in tag matches, most often with X-Pac. And of course, he has a lot of singles matches too. At King of the Ring, it's a three-way here with X-Pac, Road Dogg, and Tori taking on the Dudley Boys in a handicap tables match. Road Dogg has a match with X-Pac, but he loses to X-Pac at SummerSlam. And then Gunn comes back on the October 16th edition of Raw and wrestles X-Pac to a no contest. Let's fast forward to No Mercy, just a week later, and we would see Steven Richards and Val Venus defeat Billy Gunn and Chyna. And the stipulation of the match is if the Right to Censor wins, Billy Gunn can no longer be called Mr. Ass. Well, since the Right to Censor won, Billy now has to refer to himself as Billy G for a brief time. This is fucking brutal. After a long absence like this, for Billy, doesn't it make sense to give him a win here? Instead, you're just taking his fucking gimmick from him.
Billy G, I can see it. Marquee everywhere. I love it.
Oh my gosh. Listen to you. November 6th on Raw, Triple H, Billy Gunn, Road Dogg, and Chyna. And they defeat, check this out, man, Chris Benoit, Perry Saturn, Dean Malenko, and Eddie Guerrero. So we get DX against, the Radicals. This is a pretty big deal. But of course, WWF wins. I mean, fuck WCW. That wouldn't make any sense.
All those guys are WWF.
You know what I mean?
Well, just because you work at WCW, you're labeled WCW forever. Eddie Guerrero was a WWF champion.
I'm aware. He wasn't at this point.
So was Rey Mysterio.
He wasn't in the match.
Oh.
At the Survivor Series on November 19th in Tampa, we would see Gunn, Road Dogg, X-Pac, and Chyna, and they take on these Radicals, Eddie Guerrero, Dean Malenko, Perry Saturn, and Benoit in an elimination match. Gunn pins Guerrero. Dogg is eliminated by Saturn. Gunn goes on to eliminate Malenko, but Benoit eliminates Gunn. Saturn and Benoit were the sole survivors.
Oh, damn. That's bullshit. WCW guys going over WWF guys.
I need to feel that way. At this point, it does feel like, Saturn and Benoit were the two guys that the company had the most faith and confidence in, right?
Probably so, yeah.
The next night on Raw, Road Dogg would team with K-Kwik and Billy Gunn to defeat Saturn, Malenko, and Guerrero. How does K-Kwik get introduced into the fold here?
Well, K-Kwik was working down in Memphis at the time, Ron Killings, and he was a rapper. He and Road Dogg had just become friends. So they had written some music together with K-Kwik rapping and Dogg singing to the rap and different things. They had presented it. We were going to do a whole music thing with Kwik and Road Dogg as a team. It was Road Dogg's idea. So he wanted to team with Kwik. They were friends and thought that their music could take them on to bigger and better things.
On November 23rd, Billy Gunn would actually beat Eddie Guerrero to win the Intercontinental title, and he'd lose it about a month later at Armageddon, dropping it to Benoit. And that sort of spells the end of the New Age Outlaws. They never really had an official breakup. They just started teaming or stopped teaming together. Can you chat me up? Why wasn't there a major angle to break these guys up? It feels like you should have blown off the deal, huh?
I think that in Vince's mind, he didn't want to do a big breakup, because you do a big breakup. He didn't want to have those single matches. He wanted to move on to Road Dogg and K-Kwik and leave the door open. They can get back together again, do a big breakup. And in wrestling, you can do anything, but his rationale was he wanted to get on to Kwik and Road Dogg.
Yeah. Billy Gunn goes on to be renamed the One Billy Gunn, and Road Dogg, as you said, teaming with K-Kwik. And I want to mention, and we'll talk about some other stuff in a minute, but this whole K-Kwik thing, because Road Dogg is obviously buddies with Ron Killings, and they did some stuff in TNA together, and yeah. But there's this weird curiosity amongst wrestling fans online of Vince McMahon's friendship or relationship or maybe fascination with Ron Killings, because it feels like there are dozens of pictures of these two hanging out. He goes on a lot of the USO tours and to entertain the troops. Do you know anything about Ron Killings' relationship with Vince McMahon? Now, let me be clear. I know somebody's going to assume that I am insinuating something homosexual, because we get questions about, is Vince gay with the Ultimate Warrior? Is Vince gay with Shawn Michaels? I'm not asking, is Ron Killings gay with Vince McMahon? So don't tweet that silly shit. I'm asking, how do these guys get along? What is it about their personalities that clicks, or that Vince really sees in Ron as a friend, maybe?
I couldn't tell you that. That all took place after I left there. So I've got no insight to that whatsoever. When I was there, when Ron was briefly there while I was there during this time, there wasn't that relationship. But Ron is a hell of a nice guy, very charming, and I could see where they would definitely hit it off.
I just,
I don't know that Ron doesn't get along with anybody.
Yeah. It feels like he has no enemies. Everybody likes him. Happy-go-lucky guy, blah, blah, blah. But it just feels like there are a ton of questions that I see on message boards and on Twitter and on Facebook about these pictures, and there's multiples out there, of Vince seemingly having the time of his life with his BFF, Ron Killings.
I don't know. I just entertaining guy.
The January 1st edition of the Figure 4 Weekly would report Brian James, a.k.a. Road Dogg, was suspended indefinitely by the WWF on December 19th after showing up in no condition to perform for the Raw show that night, before K-Kwik, his regular partner, ended up going out to the ring alone for Jacked, doing his rap on his own and making no mention of Dogg. There are many people in the WWF who think the suspension is just a nice way to say he's pretty much fired. Dogg had another incident a few weeks ago on an airline and was detained when the flight landed. On January 22nd, Figure 4 reported that Gunn's wife was expecting their new child at any time, and a few lines down it said that Road Dogg is accepting independent bookings and apparently is telling people he'd been fired. So chat me up. How did this go down, Bruce?
Well, that is what happened. Dogg showed up at TV out of his mind. Like I said before, when you show up to work like that and it's in front of you, you got to deal with it. And we dealt with it by offering to get him help. And I believe, could be wrong on this, but I'm pretty sure this is the one where it was Dogg didn't feel that he needed help at this time and felt that he wasn't ready to go back into rehab. He was sent home, and shortly after that, he was let go. And he was let go for that.
How did he take that?
Not well. Not well at all.
So chat me up. Of course, Road Dogg, sort of went into business for himself down at TNA, and he starts a little heel group and calls themselves VKM, which is obviously Vince McMahon's initials. He's cutting some scathing promos. He and Billy Gunn did some shoot interviews, sort of shitting on the company and Vince McMahon and Triple H. You're there for some of this behavior, not TNA, but you're working with the WWF when some of this is happening. Chat me up as to what the feeling is like in the office when this is supposedly one of Triple H's good buddies, and now he's just burying the shit out of you guys.
I think that there, a little bit of a betrayal. I'm going to put words in Triple H's mouth, but I think a little bit of betrayal. But you kind of, unfortunately, in the wrestling business, you kind of expect it sometimes, and guys are just doing what they can to get over and get noticed and be controversial. So they're out doing things and saying things that are going to get them press and get them noticed. As far as the VKM thing, the Voodoo Kin Mafia, nobody paid any attention to that. That was not a major. Oh my God, TNA is saying VKM. No, nobody, non-issue.
Well, they're clearly trying to draw whatever attention they can. They're saying Shawn Michaels and Triple H's real names on television, and they're trying to be edgy and controversial. And it is kind of ironic that not too long after this, they'd be welcomed back. And of course, Road Dogg becomes an agent and is now sort of running the show for SmackDown, if you believe the reports you see online. And of course, Billy Gunn went on to be a trainer at NXT, and we know there's been some hiccups since, but I'm sure he'll be back at some point. So they're both in pretty favorable positions with the company, even after doing that. This feels like yet another example of Vince welcoming someone who it felt like would never be back into the family.
Well, I think, sometimes you got to forgive and forget and move on.
Well, they have moved on. Of course, they come back in 2012 after seemingly, there's no shot at that. And they're back. Not only are they back, they wind up winning the World Tag Team titles from Goldust and Cody Rhodes at the 2014 Royal Rumble. They lose them to the Usos on Raw. So all told, the New Age Outlaws would win the World Tag Team titles here in the World Wrestling Federation or World Wrestling Entertainment 6 times. And they feel like such an important part of the Attitude Era. Obviously, with the whole suck it chant, the crotch chops, we got 2 words for you, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. I mean, all of that stuff was so over. It's such a part of the Attitude Era. I'm curious what you think their legacy in the business will be, because they did so much before, obviously with Road Dogg having such a history with his family in the business and Billy Gunn as a smoking gun. And now they're both working in the business in a different role. What will their legacy be, do you think?
I think that Billy's legacy is going to be the New Age Outlaws and their time with DX. I think that Road Dogg's legacy is obviously going to be a part of the Armstrong name or the James name, if you will. And I really and truly, you laugh at this. We used to say this way back when Brian was in the New Age Outlaws, that his true legacy will be in creative and coming up with things for other people. He truly is a creative guy and has great ideas. And I think that when all's said and done, that's going to be Brian James's legacy.
And I know, a lot of people, without knowing his full story, will hear that and his position in the company now and be like, what? The guy who went to rehab, who got fired for drugs, who couldn't keep his shit together, and they just totally dismiss what he did in a prior life, being a fucking Marine, leading other Marines, and then all the creativity that he was able to bring to the Attitude Era. If you mesh both of those together, the discipline and the leadership with that creativity, he's like the fucking perfect guy to be in.
Yeah, and I'm not advocating doing drugs or abusing anything like that. But I will say this: when you have done those things, you have a lot of things to draw back on and create from, I guess, if you will. When you've lived life and you've experienced pretty much so many things in different ways, you got a lot to draw from. And he's got a hell of a lot to draw from.
What was the Steve Martin movie where he was like the revival preacher, Leap of Faith, I think?
Leap of Faith, yeah.
So, he has a speech in there about, he's the perfect preacher because he's the sinner, and
yes,
it's just an interesting story. I think Road Dogg has one of the more fascinating stories in all of wrestling, not to discount Billy Gunn's position, but just where Road Dogg is now and where he was before. I mean, who the fuck has done that? Let me ask you this. Billy Gunn certainly has had himself a Hall of Fame worthy career. 9 tag team titles, Intercontinental title, Hardcore title, King of the Ring. He did it all. Obviously, Road Dogg's there too. 6 tag titles, Hardcore title, Intercontinental title, and what he's doing now. These guys are definitely getting in the Hall of Fame, right?
Absolutely. Definitely.
Will they go in your opinion, will there be a DX induction or will it just be the New Age Outlaws?
Frankly, I think that they should go in as the New Age Outlaws, and I think they should go in as DX.
So you think they should get 2 rings like Ric Flair did?
Yeah.
I like it. Where do you rank the New Age Outlaws? This is something we're going to get everybody talking about and tweeting about it, and I want you in our conversation. Participate over on Facebook. It's facebook.com/something to wrestle. As a reminder, when we get 30,000 likes, we're going to throw you a bonus show. But Bruce, you're actually going to roll out a new segment this coming week. Do you want to smarten everybody up?
I'll let you do it.
Well, here's the deal. We know you want more Bruce. We know you want more insight. Starting this next week on Monday, you'll be able to tune in and get a couple of minutes with Bruce every single day to get your day started. I'm talking 7 days a week, every single day. You'll get 2 or 3 minutes of love from Bruce Prichard. Any sort of little insight, little anecdotes he's got, really fun stuff that you don't want to miss. It's over at facebook.com/something to wrestle. If you've always wondered, when are they going to do a second show? How about a daily one? How about a few minutes every single day to get your day started? First thing in the morning, go check out facebook.com/something to wrestle. And when you throw us that like, or one closer to a bonus show. But let's stir some shit up, man. Where do you rank the New Age Outlaws? All-time tag team greatest list. Where are they? Above who? Below who? Tippy top? What do you think?
Top 5.
Okay, let's talk about freestyle now. Who else is in that top 5? You're putting the New Age Outlaws in there. Let's round out the 5 in no particular order.
I'm going to put the Hardys in there.
Woof! Pissing everybody off. Let's keep going.
Hey, you know what? Great. I'm going to put the Hart Foundation in there.
Oh yeah, people are pissed now.
Why?
Well, because you're going to have to squeeze out somebody. There's no room for the Steiners, the Express, the other Express, the Road Warriors. How are you rounding it out?
I'm putting the Road Warriors and the Midnight Express in there, and then and the Rock and Roll Express.
That's 6.
I'll do 6.
No, you got to do 5.
Okay, I'll push the Hardys out for Rock and Roll.
So Rock and Roll Express, Midnight Express, the Road Warriors, the Hart
New Age
Foundation,
Outlaws, and the Hearts.
and wow. So the Steiners are fucked. Hardys are fucked.
Well, you want 5 people. I mean, there's only 5 teams that can go on the top 5.
A lot of people right now are going to find our show and they're going to delete it. I'm just saying.
God, have at it.
Chat me up. Let's talk about, what's next for these guys. Do you think Billy Gunn's getting welcomed back in the fold? It feels like just a matter of time to me, doesn't it? You?
Yeah, sure.
Can you think of another tag team? This is what's most fascinating to me about the New Age Outlaws. Can you think of another tag team where it was two sort of, I don't mean to disparage the guys, but floundering singles. They didn't have the singles career they anticipated. They put them together and they're fucking dynamite. And then you try them as singles again and it's just a fart in church. Can you think of a time with another set of guys who have that exact same situation?
Well, the Dudleys, after they were a team, their singles thing floundered. That didn't work.
But they weren't really singles before. Not really.
Well, but they weren't necessarily a team either. They were a group.
I call them
in ECW.
Can you give me another one? Is the Rock and Roll Express maybe the Midnight Express?
Well, see, Bobby Eaton was always a great tag team guy. Bobby was always just he was with George Goulas. I mean, he was the worker, but Bobby was always a tag team guy. Bobby was never I can't ever remember Bobby having a single run.
Well, I'd love to hear from you. If you're a listener and you have an answer here, let's start a debate and let's do it on Facebook. Facebook.com/something to wrestle. We'll throw a post up. You think of another tag team quite like the New Age Outlaws where, the sum of the parts, man. Wow. What a team. But individually, it was good. But it wasn't what it was as a tag team before or after. Let's go to Facebook. We asked you some questions here on Facebook. What would you like to know about the New Age Outlaws? And you can ask questions for next week when we cover Bret Hart's 1996 and 1997. Check it out, facebook.com/something to wrestle. Bruce, we're going to rapid fire a handful of questions here. Are you ready?
Go for it.
Chris Kelly wants to know, was there ever another tag team that had heat with the Outlaws? That's the end of the question.
I can't remember anybody really having heat with the Outlaws themselves.
Rob MC wants to know, did Road Dogg always have a great mind for the business back then? And were you surprised with his success behind the scenes now?
Road Dogg had a great mind for the business from the first day I met him.
Mike wants to know, how much did he hate the one gimmick? Of course, he's talking about Billy Gunn, the one.
Billy, I think, was happy to have any kind of singles push at the time. I don't know that he really hated any of them.
Rumor and innuendo from Michael is that Road Dogg did not get along with The Rock.
Not that I know of.
Shanda says, a lot of people during this time were bringing laser pointers to the show. How much of a concern were they? Was anyone ever injured because of a laser pointer? Did WWE security ever do anything for laser pointers?
The funny thing with the laser pointers at the beginning was they were associated with sights on guns.
Right.
So when everybody started seeing that, there was a fear of that, and then they became more prevalent. No one ever really got hurt with it, but yeah, security looked out for them and would confiscate them if they found them.
Mike wants to know, who was the biggest backstage cheerleader for the Outlaws joining DX, and was anyone against it?
Shawn Michaels was the biggest cheerleader, and I don't remember anybody being against it other than Vince Russo just didn't see it.
Drew wants to know, how did Honky Tonk and Billy Gunn get along during the Rockabilly days?
Fine.
Anthony wants to know, how did Vince McMahon feel about Road Dogg's doggy pump handle slam?
God damn, look at that. It was Attitude Era. It was attitudinal.
You know what he wants to know? What would it sound like if Vince pitched the doggy style pump handle slam?
God damn, get behind me. Pump that ass like you're going to town. Go downtown. That's right. Just when you think you're going to go down there, go on up there and get you some.
Brian Hartman wants to know, why was Road Dogg paired with K-Kwik rather than given a more considerable singles push, considering his prominent mic skills?
Yeah, I think we already covered that because they came in, they were friends, and they wanted to be together.
Ryan wants to know, can Johnny Ace sing the Mr. Ass theme song?
I'm just an ass man. Is that how that goes? I don't even know the song. I have no idea, but I am.
No, I'm not getting you. No, I need you to Google it right now. Mr. Ass lyrics, throw in your Google machine.
I don't have Google.
Oh my God. Listen, if you really don't know how to find it, I'll email it to you. Just check your email right now. But this is something that I didn't know I needed. But we have some pretty smart listeners. So I just emailed you a link. And this is every single verse of this song. We'll come back to it in a minute. Andrew wants to know.
I'm an ass man. Yeah, I'm an ass man. I like to love him. I like to kick him. I like to shove him. I like to stick him. I love to fawn him. I love to watch him. I love to pick him. I'm going to kick him because I'm an ass man. Yeah, I'm an ass man. Yes, I'm an ass man. Oh, I'm an ass man. So many asses, so little time. Only a tight one can stop me on the dime. I'm a lover of every kind. The best surprises always sneak up from behind. I'm an ass man. I especially like yours, Vince. Back it on up. Yeah, I'm an ass man. That's it.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Oh God. When I remembered that I love to love them, love to kick them, love to stick them, I was like, oh God, he's got to do that.
We got to get to my big announcement here. We're like, good God, this is a marathon today.
We're almost done, Ass Dick. Hang on just a second. Did WWE ever consider using Road Dogg instead of Chuck Palumbo for the gay innuendo angle?
No.
Was there bad blood between the Outlaws and Hunter towards the end of their WWF run?
No.
Todd Mallet wants to know, when you brought back DX in 06, was there ever any consideration of including them? At first, it was just a Shawn Hunter thing.
That would be a no to that too.
Michael Scott Moore wants to know, Honky Tonk Man said in a shoot interview that Billy was upset over the Rockabilly character and threatened to go to WCW. So in return, he was put in a tag team with Road Dogg. Do you remember?
Billy was upset, when that thing wasn't working. I don't remember him ever threatening to go to WCW because threats don't work with Vince. But he definitely was upset towards the end of that run because it was going nowhere.
Martin Adams wants to know, any good rib stories between the two?
Not that I can think of off the top of my head. Sorry.
Henry wants to know, I always thought the best part of the New Age Outlaws was their entrance and didn't think much of their in-ring work. What did you think of their in-ring work?
God, I thought they were an excellent team. I thought they complemented each other well, and the fact that they were different, I thought they were great in-ring workers. Tremendous.
Caleb and Tessa Massey, nice joint Facebook account, kids, wants to know, in your mind, are they the most underrated tag team of all time?
Not the most, but I think they were underrated back in the day.
Jeff Morris wants to know, were the Outlaws always scheduled to join DX with X-Pac before Shawn was injured? That's a great call.
No, I'm trying to think of the timeline because Shawn got injured January. What was it?
It was January at the Royal Rumble.
January at the Rumble. It was kind of in that time frame we were building to that. They were going to get there. I don't really remember time frame wise, but it was Shawn who wanted to bring them, put them together, and eventually get them in DX.
Matthew wants to know, if Road Dogg hadn't gotten in trouble in 01, would he have eventually turned on K-Kwik and reformed the Outlaws?
Don't know.
Tim has an easy answer, I think. Do you think either one of these guys would have reached the same success without DX?
No.
Joe wants to know, who in the office was an ass man?
Oh, like Vince's.
Nick wants to know, was there ever talk about giving the Outlaws a signature tag team finisher? They're one of the few greatest of all time tag teams I can think of to not have one. That's a great question.
They didn't need one. That's what made them unique. To me, that's what made them such a good tag team.
Well, they're one of the best tag teams of all time, and we are done with this week's episode. Of course, don't forget to go ahead and like us on Facebook and check out our new segment every single morning on your ride to work or as soon as you wake up. Cruise on over to Facebook.com/something to wrestle and get a few minutes with Bruce to get your day started right. And throw us a like. At 30,000, you're getting a bonus show. And fire off some questions, man. Look for our post on Bret Hart next week. We're going to be back discussing all things Bret Hart 96, 97. But we've held people in suspense long enough. If you've made it this long to the end of our marathon edition of the New Age Outlaws episode here on Something to Wrestle, then you deserve the good news. The special announcement, November 19th, House of Blues, right before Survivor Series, 1 o'clock in the afternoon. We have a very special guest, and he's not from the wrestling world. Kinda. He's maybe a little bit of an icon in Houston.
Well, he is a member of the World Series World Championship Astros. And we are going to have our friend Josh Reddick, the right fielder for the Houston Astros, the world champion Houston Astros. Number 22 is going to join us in Houston on stage to talk. Well, we're going to have us an Astros celebration there, by God, at the House of Blues. And we're going to talk some wrestling because, by God, Josh, he said there's nothing more that he likes to do than to talk wrestling. And that includes being out there on the baseball field.
So let's run through this. Not only do you get your favorite podcast, Something to Wrestle with Bruce Prichard, not only do you get stories we can't dare tell on the podcast, but you also get your World Series champion, Josh Reddick, live and in person. Only one place to pick up tickets, and let me tell you, we're going to sell out. boxofgimmicks.com. Go pick them up right now. We would love to have you at the House of Blues just before Survivor Series. It's Bruce Prichard, Conrad Thompson, and Josh Reddick. Are you kidding? I buried the lead. Josh Reddick, the World Series champion. Come see him in person. boxofgimmicks.com is the place to pick up your tickets. And, of course, you want to be there sporting a brand new T-shirt. Pick that up at brucepritchard.com. And there's a special sale going on right now. If you need that code, we've got it for you over at facebook.com/something to wrestle. Don't forget to support our great sponsors, our friends over at Go Pro Wrestling. Of course, our very great friends at WWE 2K who hooked up on one of our very special listeners with a very special opportunity. But most of all this week, your favorite and mine, what gets us out of the doghouse so we can do that doggy style pump handle slam we like so much. Pro Flowers, go use our code right now. Spend $29 and get 20% off at proflowers.com. And don't forget to use our code. It's WWE at proflowers.com. We ran long, but these guys deserved it. The best there is, the best there was, and the best there ever will be is next week, right here on Something to Wrestle with Bruce Prichard, boxofgimmicks.com, Josh Reddick, Roll Tide.
Whoa, hang on, baby, where you going? Now listen up here, I got a little special message for you, because I know you heard me read ads on him for brands like Pro Flowers, Brooklyn, and WWE 2K18, what have you. And they all great businesses, great companies that I truly use and believe in. And these ads are great because they keep the show for free. And they introduce our listeners to some brand new products and services that I know you love. It's a win for everybody. And I'm happy to have the help and expertise of Mid-Roll Media to ensure that this show continues to have great advertisers. So here's the deal. If you're interested in advertising on Something to Wrestle with Bruce Prichard, what I want you to do is I want you to go on over to midroll.com and I want you to click up there in the right corner that says contact, and you let those folks at Midroll know that you want to advertise on Something to Wrestle with Bruce Prichard. All right. They also represent some other great shows now. You know, y'all all heard of the Sean Mooney, Prime Time with Sean Mooney, Sam Roberts, Colt Cabana, everybody. They got some great shows that they represent. But you can reach an array of engaged listeners by advertising right here on their show. And all you got to do is go on over to Midroll. That's MIDROLL.com. Go on up to contact and let them know you want to advertise right here with Bruce and Prichard on Something to Wrestle With. Bruce Prichard.
Have you or someone you know been diagnosed with mesothelioma? You probably have many questions, such as, what should I do? Where can I get more information? RGT4Law.com can answer those questions and help you get the money you deserve. Call 855-RGT4Law or visit RGT4Law.com and fill out the simple form for a free consultation. Robert Taylor, RG Taylor II, PC and Associates, Houston, Texas.
Oh, you didn't know? You better call somebody. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, tonight, D-Generation X proudly brings to you the one-time podcast champion of the world, Killer Conrad Thompson, Bad Boy Bruce Prichard, Something to Wrestle with Bruce Prichard. Oh, you didn't know? You better call somebody.
The world of MLW Radio never stops.